Hi everyone, and welcome to this year's full houseplant tour video. Now, I do get a lot of new people from these videos, so if you are new, I want to say welcome. My name is Drea. I make all kinds of different houseplanty content here on YouTube. I do own a wide variety of types of plants. I do currently have a little bit over 100 plants within my home that we're going to be taking a look at today. Now, a couple of disclaimers up front. This year, I've decided to do this video slightly differently than I have in the last few years. And what I'm going to do today is I'm basically going to give you a little bit of history on what happened with each of the plants over the course of 2025. And then I'm going to talk about what my goal for the plant is for 2026. Now, if you are new here, I really like to talk about my plants, and sometimes I get a little bit off on tangents on things about the plants. I'm trying my best to reel it in, you guys. I'm trying my best to reel it in, but just bear with me. Now, just a couple other disclaimers because this next one happens every year. We just hit 2026, you guys, and my brain has not fully grasped that concept yet. So, inevitably, because like I said, happens every year, I will say things in this video such as over the course of this year. And when I say over the course of this year, 9 times out of 10, what I mean is over the course of 2025, because obviously we haven't really been in 2026 that long. My brain just can't quite reconcile it. It usually is something that happens more at the beginning of the tour and less at the end of the tour, but just bear with me and recognize that lots of times when I say this year, I mean over the course of 2025. Now, the next disclaimer is that these videos really take a long time to film. I'm talking 4 to 5 hours. My brain gets a little tired over the course of that time frame, so every now and again, something will come out of my mouth that was not what was in my brain. When that happens, I will pop a correction up on screen for you, and I like to include a little sound effect popping noise just to get your attention. So hopefully I will have corrected anything that came out of my mouth wrong, but if I didn't, just know it probably was an accident. Oh, and before I forget, because I always do, and somebody always notices and drops a comment, you're going to see these two plants back here in a different room during this houseplant tour video. This is my office we are in right now. They do not normally live here. You're going to see them where they normally live. I just don't want anybody to be like, wait a minute, she said they live here, but I saw them on a bookshelf in the beginning of the video. I swap plants in and out of this bookshelf situation for filming videos in my office just to give a better little planty background and showcase some of my favorite plants at the moment. So that's why you're not going to see them on this bookshelf in this tour. This is not where they normally live, and I'm going to show you all of the plants in their current living situations. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the tour. Okay, so we're going to start on this side of the living room. Now, this is directly opposite of my southern facing windows, so this side of the room is the furthest away from natural light, which is why I did install a Soltech Aspect pendant light up here to help give these plants a little bit extra boost of light. However, it is a little bit too much for the one plant that is on the wall. I've addressed this before, but hopefully this year I can figure out a new place to put that plant, or I might actually replace the light. They have a new dimmable version of it, you guys. This is not the dimmable version. I might actually put this one somewhere else and get the dimmable one and put it up here, because that way I can just not have to deal with moving this plant and not have to deal with trying to adjust the height of the light, which I don't have a lot of room to do. I can just dim the light. By the way, you guys are going to see multiple Soltech lights throughout this video. If you are interested in getting one, I do have a link in the description below. You can use that to get, I believe it's 15% off your order. It's automatically applied when you use that link. But let's start with the largest plant here, which is my all green monstera. Now, real quick, you guys, the majority of the plants that you're going to see in this room I've had for close to 5 years or a little over 5 years, including this monstera, which was tiny, 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 tiny when I first got it. Now, this is technically 9 plants in one pot. Yes, it's a bit extreme, but I kind of like how it gives me this nice bushy appearance, although it is starting to get a bit out of hand with its size. So this year might be the year that I need to break this up into fewer plants. But the most important thing that you guys need to know about what happened this year with this plant are 2 things. One, I got my first leaf with a hole, so not just the slits for the fenestrations, but a hole. This is the only leaf that has had that happen. Now, when I did get this plant, hardly any of the leaves had slits at all. So it's definitely taken a while to get to this point. This is actually the newest leaf right here. Did not get a hole for some reason, but that's okay. Still much more mature than the original leaves. So this plant has been growing nicely for me this year, but unfortunately we did also get our first pest infestation, and I am still trying to work my way through that, you guys. So you are going to notice on the plants over here that there are beneficial bug sachets. That's for predatory mites because this plant is too big for me to take into my bathroom to try and spray down with a pest spray or anything like that. So hopefully I can get it taken care of. Spider mites are just the bane of my existence. Well, actually, flat mites are worse. I think, fingers crossed, I've gotten that situation under control in this household. But yeah, I'm just not happy about it. You can see some of the damage if I can get up in there. See how that one leaf with no fenestrations is kind of yellowing on the bottom? It's got the speckling that is indicative of spider mites. That's how I knew I had spider mites. Now, miraculously, I have not seen any webbing, so I do think I caught it quickly enough to get it under control, but still just not very happy about it. So that is my primary goal for this year, is to get the pest situation under control in this plant. And then I do still need to repot it. Almost all of the plants that I told you guys in last year's video needed to be repotted. Most of them did not actually get repotted. So you're probably going to hear me saying I need to repot these plants a lot in this video again, which it's been over 3 years, you guys. Not like I'm trying to repot this plant twice a year or anything like that. I do know it has been drying out way more quickly. I think that might have been partially what led to the spider mites being attracted to it. So it needs to be done. But moving along to the plant up here on the wall, this is my Hoya Wilbur Graves. This is one of my favorite Hoyas. And I'm gonna have to come around from this angle to get close enough for you guys to see it without me having to stand all up in the Monstera's business. Once again, you do see these sachets that are hanging up in the foliage there. Those are beneficial bugs. I didn't want to remove them because, like I said, the Monstera has spider mites. There's a good chance they've crawled onto this plant or the other plant, so just bear with me. But we are in bloom right now. Look at those beautiful flowers. And this plant has pretty much bloomed nonstop for me all year long. It is one of my prolific bloomers when it comes to Hoyas. I guess I should say one of my most prolific ones. But I absolutely love the green leaves on this plant with that silver splashing. Now, I have been thinking that I might untrellis it this year. It's just there's only so many times you can wrap vines around a trellis before I feel like it's becoming overkill. And this plant does grow very rapidly. And it's also, if I untrellised it, it would help with the light situation because it wouldn't be as close to the light up here. But I would have to move it because it's going to look ridiculous. If I let it trail here, it's just going to be hidden behind these plants. But all in all, it has done great for me this year, and I fully anticipate it to continue doing the exact same thing this upcoming year. Now, my Tenanthe setosa over here is not really looking its best right now, you guys. Like, it's going through a phase, and they do this sometimes, and they will kill off a bunch of leaves, which is what is happening. Hopefully you can see up there. A lot of these leaves are drying up and dying off, but I'm not worried about it because it is also pushing out a bunch of beautiful new growth down here. And it has actually kicked off an entire new rhizome in the pot. And that is part of the reason that it's killing off its old leaves. It's prioritizing pushing up new shoots from that new rhizome. And that's just what happens with these plants sometimes. I also did get a little bit inconsistent with my watering with this plant a few times this year, which doesn't help the situation. But basically what it's going to end up doing is all these taller leaves you see, it's going to kill all of those off. It's going to push up a bunch more growth that's shorter from the bottom, and then it will just gradually fill itself back in. It's just what happens, you guys. You're going to notice some of my prayer plant family plants, which Tenanthe are in the prayer plant family. Some of them are not looking their best right now, and that's because they go through these phases. I do have a video all about it, explaining that your plant's not dying when it's doing this and what's happening. I'll be sure to link that down below in the description for you. Okay, so now we're going to move along to this wall that is behind my couch. So it is perpendicular to my southern facing windows. This is the furthest spot away from the windows on this wall that I have a plant. This is my Raven ZZ plant. Love this plant, you guys. This is hands down my easiest to care for, like set it and forget it type style plant. Now, I like this plant because I think it looks highly sculptural doing what it's doing right now, but this is very stretched out because it is far, far away from the window. If I had this plant directly in a southern facing window, all of these would be sticking more upright and not stretching out as much, but I really kind of like how it looks. I like how it looks. It's doing fine. It's actually giving me more new branches this year than it has in previous years. I haven't repotted it or anything since I first got it because I haven't needed to. Now, I do suspect this year that I may have to repot it. It's starting to warp the pot because the new branches are just so close to the edges that this pot is becoming more oval shaped and less circular. But it did also put out some new branches here in the center this year, which was exciting. But let's move on now to the shelves up on the wall. And let me get resituated with this camera because these are always a little bit difficult to do. Okay, hopefully this works, you guys. I've got this camera on a monopod balanced on the couch with a cat laying next to it who looks like he thinks it's a toy. So if the camera starts moving a lot, that's what's going on. But this first shelf up here, I do now have my baby frost peperomia up here. So peperomia caparata frost. I say baby because the mama of this plant used to live up here, but I decided this year that I didn't really need two of these plants, so I sold off the mother plant and kept this one, which I propagated about 5 years ago from a single leaf off of the mama plant, and it eventually grew into this without me doing anything else to it, you guys. So peperomias will grow new plantlets, like completely new plantlets from a single leaf. I never added new cuttings into this pot. This has only ever been one leaf that I put in water, and once it started getting roots, I put it in this pot, this exact pot, and this is what happened with me doing nothing but watering and fertilizing it over the course of approximately 5 years. But absolutely love this plant. Now, I know a lot of people struggle with peperomias. Most of the plants you see today, you guys, I do have care guides for. There's a playlist on my YouTube channel that's called, I think, Houseplant Care Guides or Houseplant Care 101. If you go in there, you can find care guides for most of the plants that you're going to see today. If there isn't one in there and you want me to make one, drop a comment below and let me know. A lot of people struggle with these, especially the caparata varieties like the frost. I will say they want more water than you think, but they will go to rot really easily. It's really about having a substrate that is well draining. That is really the key to these. However, if you've struggled with peperomias, especially the caparata varieties, my best recommendation to you is to start with a parallel peperomia. That is going to be one of the easier ones if you've struggled with caparatas. They have much thicker leaves. They behave much more like a succulent. They're much more tolerant of drying out than caparatas are. And also, they seem to be not as easily prone to rotting if you water a little bit too soon between waterings. But absolutely love this plant. Now, moving on over here, we have my philodendron micans, one of my favorite plants. I think this was the third trailing philodendron I ever got. I got it from Steve's Leaves. Highly recommend Steve's Leaves if you're not familiar with them. We are definitely nice and long, and I have trimmed and propagated this one several times over the course of this year, but it just does fabulously for me. Now, it does need a repot, not because it is root bound, but because it is in a pot liner, and I will explain that when we get to another plant on the next shelf over. And I've just been having issues with my plants that I have in these pot liners, sending their roots straight to the bottom, and then they get really tightly coiled up in the bottom, and they just don't seem very happy with it. So goal this January, or maybe February, because I feel like January is already like halfway over. How does time go by so fast, you guys? January or February this year is to put this into basically the same size pot, just not a pot liner, and it will be a slightly deeper pot for that reason. But absolutely love it. It's been fabulously for me this year. Over here, we have a newer plant. Okay, I'm going to step up on the couch, you guys. Hopefully that doesn't make me more shaky or anything. This is actually a relatively new plant. I have had this one for, I think it'll be 2 years in April. This is 2 plants. Well, that's kind of a lie. I've had there's 2 plants in this pot. I've had one for 2.5 years, one for 2 years in April, but it did start growing a nice long vine recently, which I just cut the other day and planted a bunch of the nodes back up into the top here to help make it more full because it had just put out this one vine that had gotten down all the way to the back of the couch and it was just too long. So it needed to get trimmed. But this plant has really taken off this year. This is a Syngonium red spot tricolor. It definitely has filled itself in. It definitely is giving me the kind of leaves I want, which are the ones that you see here that have some of that reddish pinkish color, some of the darker green, and some of the lighter green with a little bit of the speckling. It does still give me some all pink leaves, which are not my favorite, but that's okay because it is giving me the other leaves as well. So this has really been the year that this plant has taken off. It is in LECA. And so I think over the course of this coming year, being 2026, I think this plant is really going to take off, start to trail more. And we're going to see how I feel about it because sometimes Syngoniums, you like them when they're little babies, but maybe not so much when they become adults. But if we move down here to this shelf, I need to kind of I need to do a little bit of a haircut on the micans here just to give it a little bit of a swoop this direction so that it's not all up in this peperomia's business. So this is another peperomia caparata variety. This is a shumi red. I absolutely adore this plant with its crinkly red leaves. Now, something I feel like nobody ever talks about with peperomias, especially caparatas, is they grow out and they get a little funky, you guys. So let me try and come around the other side here so I can show you. So hopefully you can see, plant looks a little bit bald back here. That is because the plant is basically trailing now. Now, this is new growth back here in the very back that's sticking straight up from where I trimmed one of the overgrown stems off a couple of months ago to get this growing back more upright. But this is just completely flopped over growth on this side. Sorry, you guys, it's really hard to maneuver this camera while I'm up on the couch. But this whole bit right here is just overgrown. Do you see? Like it's flopped over completely. So when that happens, you just need to prune them back. Like I said, I pruned that one in the back, way back, and it will start to grow more upright. This one here is kind of flopped over too. So I need to this year do a little work on this one to get it growing back more in an upright pattern. I mean, from a distance, you guys, it looks fine, right? You were just looking at it from over here. It looks okay, although I think I moved some of those out of the way. It looked a little better before I started messing with it. But if you get up close, you're like, wait a minute, this thing is a little overgrown. This just happens with peperomias. You just have to trim them back. Don't trim the whole thing back at once. Peperomias don't like that. Just do one plantlet at a time and wait till it starts to grow in more before you cut the others. But that's the goal with this plant for this year. Now moving up here, oh, another incoming cat. This is where things start to get tricky. Everybody's going to try to play with my feet and the thing that the camera is on. So up here we do have my Epiprimnum aureum mandula. Love this plant. This plant has gotten very long this year. I have never cut this plant back. So this is growth over the course of, I've had this one for about 3 years. And it's a bunch of different plantlets that I planted together up into this pot. And this is what I was talking about with a clear pot liner. So I do need to repot this one this year. As you can see, hopefully what I was talking about where all the vines just go straight to the bottom and they coil up real tight in there. I don't like that. I don't want it to do that. So we're going to put this in the same size pot in terms of diameter, just a deeper pot, and hopefully it will be happier. But I absolutely love it. Love how it's doing. And then next to it, we have my Hoya linearis, one of my favorite Hoyas. And this year, once again, I say this year, last year, during 2025, I need to just say during 2025, we potted a ton of cuttings back up in the top. And as you can see, they are all still alive and doing well. The cuttings are all of the shorter vines that you see up there, but the original vines are still growing nice and long. And we're almost hitting the couch again, which means I need to give this one a trim again. Now, it has bloomed for me twice in 2025, I believe. It is not currently blooming. It just recently dropped its last blooms, but it is gorgeous when it blooms, you guys. The flowers smell nice, like absolutely love it. And then moving on down here, I did put one of my newest plants here. This is a Hoya Heuschkliana outer variegated variety that I got a couple months ago in a Palm Street live sale. Now it is just a little baby, that's why it's not trailing yet or anything like that, but hopefully you can see it does have a little bit of the white around the edges of the leaves. That is what I mean by outer variegated. This one has been doing great for me. It's still in the substrate that it came in, which is pretty much solely cocoa coir. I actually am in the process of transferring all of the plants that are in sole cocoa coir into my epiphyte mix. I have pretty much determined that I think I'm letting the cocoa coir ones dry out too much and they're not growing as quickly for me. So I am in the process of converting them all. Now, the ones that were in cocoa chunks with like the giant perlite, those are all doing fine for me. But this one's like, hold on, let me get it out. Sorry if I'm a little shaky with the camera doing this. Once again, standing on the couch. This one has the chunky perlite, but hopefully you can see it's like solid cocoa coir. It's not just the chunks. The ones that really are just cocoa coir chunks and perlite seem to be doing a little bit better for me, so I haven't messed with any of those yet. But these ones in the sole cocoa coir, it's got to get changed out because I'm worried I'm going to like mess something up with the plant. And then moving on to the last shelf over here, we have my string of pearls, which is a little crooked right now. String of pearls and my Hoya curtisii. Now, string of pearls, I have mentioned in a video not too long ago that this is the only Senecio, now actually classified as Curio, string of plant that I still own. I used to have a string of dolphins. I used to have a string of bananas. I did get rid of those because these plants just don't age well, you guys. And case in point, you can see up on the top there, we're looking a little bit bald. This is just what happens with these plants, and they will get a little bald on top. Vines will start to drop leaves further up, and then you'll just have the pearls further down, and it gets a little bit funky looking. Now, I have discovered that on the string of pearls, it doesn't happen as badly or as quickly. So what I've done with this plant, which it needs to happen again because hopefully you could see we're almost to the couch. So as I need to trim it, I basically wind the cuttings up in the top and then I sprinkle a little more cacti and succulent soil over them, and then they will root in and they will continue to grow and produce new vines. And so that for me has helped to keep this plant looking good over the course of 5 years. And I don't know, it just works easier, more easily, I guess I should say, with a string of pearls than it's ever worked for me with a string of dolphins or a string of bananas, which is why I chose just to hang on to the string of pearls, but I absolutely love it. Hoya curtisii. This is one of the first Hoyas I ever owned. Definitely nice and long, and actually it has grown back up itself in several places, so there's probably some really long vines there. I just have not wanted to deal with untangling it. But this plant did bloom for me the first time in 2025, and it was very exciting for me because it was my only Hoya that I had had for a long time that hadn't bloomed yet. And I did repot it with you guys in a video in 2025 because I wanted to get it into a clear pot. It was one of the few plants that I have that was not in a clear pot still. And I was worried that I had been underwatering it. Oh yeah, you guys, I'd been going like a week too long between waterings. Like it was more rooted than I thought, and it was drying out way more quickly. And now I'm starting to get a lot more growth going on it. So yeah, this plant was not happy with me. So hopefully that means we will bloom again this year, and we are definitely going to be living a much happier life now that mom knows how often we actually need to be watered. So next up, we have all the plants that are directly in the southern facing windows, which is always fun to try and film. But there do appear to be some clouds rolling over right now, so we might get lucky and have an easier time today than normal. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see okay. So down here on the shelf, we do have my Hoya Weyettii. Love this plant. Now, I have been mentioning recently that I think this plant has mutated. This plant does not really look like what it did when I first got it, in the sense of I am getting these crinkly, like slightly crinkly leaves just nonstop. I mean, every leaf that comes in is slightly crinkly like this, and it's been like this for a long time. Now the plant is obviously growing. You can see the very long vines going all over the place. This plant has bloomed for me once before. It's doing fine. It's just for whatever reason, I am getting these crinkly leaves, and this is not what a Weddii usually looks like, which is why I feel like this plant has done some crazy mutation. When I first got it, let's see if I can get to some of the old leaves, the leaves look normal. Do you guys see those two leaves down there? Those are the oldest leaves. That's what your Weddii leaves usually look at like. They are long, they are not curly, they are not tacoed, and they are not tacoing, you guys, because this thing needs to be watered. It's not a case of these leaves are not firm anymore and they're curling in on themselves. Look, they're super firm. This thing just got watered the other day. So I don't know. I think this plant has just mutated. If anybody has any ideas, if you've seen a plant or a Weddii or a plant that looks kind of like this that's labeled something else before, comment down below and let us know. But absolutely love this plant. It is doing fabulously. Now, down here we do have what I refer to as my pot Hoya. And this is just a little pot that I put together of multiple Hoyas, potted in their own individual nursery pots, mind you. They're not potted directly in here. I just did this because I had a lot of little 2-inch Hoyas just hanging out in a windowsill in my kitchen, and I was like, we need to do a better job. We need to make this more styled. So I did combine them in here. So we do have a Hoya, I always forget the numbers, E something. It will be up on screen for you back here. This plant has just not wanted to grow much for me. Now it is one that was in cocoa chips and the very coarse, large perlite. I did actually repot it recently into my epiphyte mix, and it's taken off a lot more since I did that in terms of just root growth. Never mind leaf growth, because that we're still waiting on, but it has started to push out a new vine up there finally. But I think it just was not happy in the cocoa chips for some reason. And it's funny because after I repotted it, it killed off almost all of its roots, its existing roots, and then just created all brand new ones that are healthier and growing more quickly. So I think that was the right move. I think this plant's going to give me a lot more growth in 2026 because of that. Now, next to it, we have my Hoya NAP 016. Adore this plant. It bloomed for me nonstop in 2025. And it just dropped all of its blooms, I think. The peduncle is back here. Yeah, it dropped all its blooms, but not worried about it. It'll start to bloom again soon. But it's been growing very nicely for me. It's gotten super rooted. I don't want to repot it just yet because, excuse me, my voice starting to go out on me, you guys. I don't want to repot it just yet because Hoyas do like to be pretty root bound. So, and it's still in a cocoa chunk perlite mix and it's done fine. So are this one right here. Well, I guess this is the only other one that's still in that mix in this pot. This is my Hoya Walliana. Hopefully I said that right. Variegated. Beautiful, beautiful plant. It has started to trail massively over the last few months. Definitely taking off, definitely well rooted, doing fine in that substrate. So I haven't messed with it. But once again, I just kind of keep an eye on my plants. And if the ones that are in that substrate are happy, I let them be. If they don't seem happy, that's when I do something about it. This right here is one of my newer plants. I feel like you can't see this one well with the lighting. There we go. This is a Hoya, I think it's pronounced Boise or Boisei. It is a very tiny leafed Hoya. This was an import plant that was gifted to me by Airwaid Asia in 2025. And that order, I think I might have left the plants in the water rehabbing a little bit too long, and they kind of started to have problems. So I had to restart all of the plants in water, reroot them in water. And so I did that with this plant, and then I potted it up, and it has really started to take off. Hopefully you can see there's a bunch of new growth going on that type vine, top. I can talk, you guys. Top vine up there. Tiny little leaves, but they sun stress when they come in, slightly maroonish in color, and it's a very dark leafed Hoya. I don't feel like the camera is doing it any justice whatsoever, but absolutely love it. I'm really excited to see this one grow out. Now, the only other plant that is in this pot, which I need to set this one down because these two kind of support that one from falling all the way in. So if I take this one out without taking that one out first is just going to fall down. So this is a Hoya Kingiana intervariegated. Make sure I was saying it correctly there. Hopefully that's not too bright for you guys. I don't know, the lighting's so hard. This plant's done nothing for me in over a year. Like, I say nothing, but really, even the roots, it hasn't even really grown that much in terms of roots. There, you can see a little bit of root down in the very bottom there. I don't know what the deal is, but I did, not that long ago, decide to transfer this one from cocoa chips and perlite into my epiphyte mix, and I can now see roots. So I think maybe that was the issue, but I really just want it to give me some new leaves. I don't know. Is this a hard one, you guys, for people to get to grow? Is it really slow? Comment down below and let me know. But that is the pot of Hoya. Let me get these back in here. And this is just a great way to better display, in my opinion, your tiny little 2-inch Hoyas if you have a lot of them. So feel free to steal that idea. Okay, over here we have one of my Monstera albos. I say one because technically I have 3 now. 2 that are just what I will call regular, standard Monstera deliciosa albos like this, and then 1 that is a slightly different variety, which we will see the other 2 when we tour the kitchen. Now, this one, plant up there getting stuck on it. This one was gifted to me by one of you guys who lives in Hawaii, so has a special place in my heart. This is also the only one that I have in a soil type substrate. The other 2 are in leca. I do find the ones in leca grow much more quickly for whatever reason, but absolutely love this plant. And it is looking a little funky right now because hopefully you guys can see the vine was stretching this way and I want to give it a pull, but the only spot in the pot is over there, but it's stretching this way. So I rotated the plant this direction to try to get it to maneuver the vine that direction so that when I repot this year, which I will need to do, I can put a pull on this side since it's too stiff to try to pull it to a pull on that side. So that's why it kind of looks a little bit funky right now. It's trying to figure out repositioning its leaves back around the other direction. But this plant does give me beautiful leaves. It does give me a good combination of the white and the green, but it does also give me some all green leaves. As you can see up here, it's pretty much an every other leaf situation. But I figure when it gets more mature, that's not going to look that bad. It might actually look kind of interesting. So I'm just rolling with it. Now moving up here, these are always the hardest plants to film. Once again, if I start to edit these and I think this lighting looks horrible, I will just keep the audio and I will do some different footage where I take it into another room so that you guys can see better what's going on. Now this is my Ceropegia woodii variegated. So this is a variegated chain of hearts. This is another plant, you guys, that does not age well, is what I will say. So hopefully you can see over here, we have a bunch of bare vines at the top, and then this plant gets very full as we go further down. This is just what happens with these plants. You have to do a bit of maintenance to keep these plants looking good. Now, a lot of people try to keep individual vines completely separated on their chain of hearts. I don't got time for that. I don't have time for that. Do I like how it looks when people do that? Yes, I don't have time for that. Do you guys know how hard it is to keep these separated when you're watering this plant? Do you know how hard it is to keep them from tangling, just carrying them from here to the kitchen to water this plant? It is a hard thing to do, and I don't mind how this looks, but I do mind how the baldness up here looks. So what I've been doing is, hopefully you can see we have tubers. This plant gets little tubers along the vines. When a vine gets super bald, what I will do is I will cut the whole vine off. I will find where the tubers are. I will cut probably about like 1 inch or 2 inches around that tuber. Sometimes, like, what I really like is if I can find one where I have like every inch there's a tuber, and I will do like a section that has 3 tubers, cut it off, and then what I will do, if I can stand up on the back of the couch here, is I will plant them back in the top. So I did that in 2025 for this plant, and all of this growth you see on the surface over here is where I potted those back in. I also potted one over there, so we're starting to get some more growth over there. But before I did that, everything up here looked bald, like you see here. But now all of this new stuff is growing in. It's starting to trail over the edge. It's trailing here, which is why this side up here has more foliage than the side over here. So I need to continue to do this process over on this side this year, and I will get this filled back in. But it is just a constant thing with these plants to kind of maintain them this way. But absolutely, absolutely love this plant. Now let's move on to the center window. And since I've already got the lighting set for the hanging plant, let's do the hanging plant over here first. Now this is what is commonly referred to as a donkey's tail. This is not a burro's tail. A burro's tail has a slightly different shape to the leaves. They're more elongated, but they are both sedums. They're varieties of sedums. I believe this is a sedum morgantianum. It'll be up on screen for you, you guys. You just forgive my pronunciations and my memory. I haven't looked at it spelled out in a hot minute, but absolutely love this plant. When I bought this plant, let's see, probably been about 4 years ago that I got this one. It was just a bunch of vines that were about as long as this one here, just sticking up out of the top of the pot. It has grown massively over that time. And in 2025, I did finally have to trim some of the vines off because they had gotten that long for the first time ever. Now, if you're not familiar, these plants are super sensitive. You barely move these things, they will drop leaves. That is why we are missing a bunch of leaves up here. It is not just like leaves dying off over time, although some of that is that. I do have a few leaves that are like starting to die off right now, but a lot of it is just the leaves getting dropped when I move it to water it. Like, it's sensitive. It's a sensitive plant, you guys. But when they pop off, I just drop them back up in the top, as you can see, and then they grow new plants, which is what we're seeing coming up off the top here. And then these will eventually, over time, grow in and kind of cover up the bald spots. And then periodically, I will just, once that happens, I will cut some of these under ones that are super bald off, and they'll start to grow again from the top. It's kind of an ongoing maintenance thing, but it's really kind of low maintenance. It's not really that difficult because you're just dropping things in the top and they just root up. Now, for me, this plant has always had this ombre look to it. I don't know if anybody else has had a different experience, but I have always had the darker green at the bottom and the lighter at the top. Maybe it's because it's directly in a southern facing window. I don't know, but the plant seems to be happy. It's doing fine. And you can see where I did finally trim it for the first time. We have 2 vines growing from where I cut it. Same thing over here. And I probably will end up having to cut it again at some point this year. Down here, oh, and I wanted to rotate this around for you guys. Well, we'll talk about it and then I'll rotate it around so you can see it. But first plant over here is actually my Alocasia Tiny Dancer, which has looked better. It is kind of reverted back to a juvenile state, and I'm not happy about it. But it's my own fault because I got really inconsistent with the watering at one point in the summer, and it basically killed off all of its leaves on me. Like it looked like it went dormant, and now it's just trying to come back. And I need to repot it because it's like in a Starbucks cup, and I just don't think it's happy living in this Starbucks cup. But it also is starting to wind a bunch of roots down around the bottom. And with my Alocasia, they like to stay moist. And in my experience, they like to be in a slightly bigger pot, even when they're not root bound. So I think I just need to repot it and I think it will bounce back and be fine. And I mean, for some of you guys maybe looking at this like, it doesn't look that bad, like, but it's looked better. And I know it's looked better. So the goal this year is to get it back to looking better. Now, before we talk about the Graptovera in the center here, because it's a little bit more involved, let's talk about the Alocasia Black Velvet over here. So one of my favorite Alocasias for sure, absolutely love how it looks with the sun shining through it right now like this. Velvet leafed Alocasia, the leaves are so dark when the sun's not shining through. Hopefully you guys can see. Love this plant, but we did repot this plant well over a year ago, might be close to 2 years now. And what happened was the original mama corm died off, but I didn't worry about it because there was baby corm in the pot that kicked off new growth. So this is all, these 3 leaves are all part of the baby corm that kicked off. Mama corm died, but then last year mama corm sprung back to life out of nowhere before then dying off again. But now she's come back to life yet again. So hopefully you can see back here. me see if I can get you a little bit closer up in here. That is mama corn right there. Hadn't had any growth for a while. This is coming directly off of her. And there's another growth point growing in back there. Hopefully you can see, also coming directly off of her. So fingers crossed, this is the year that my black velvet alocasia gets back to being as full as it was before we repotted it the last time. That is my goal with this plant for this year. Now, the Graptovera here, man, you guys, the sun is like totally shining in my eyes. This is really hard for me to see. This Graptovera, I'm actually going to be filming an updated how to propagate a succulent via beheading method for you guys using this plant this month. Probably it won't be released till February though, because this plant has gotten out of control. So hopefully you guys can see. It's completely flopped over. I don't know if you guys can tell that that's what's happening, but first of all, this stem is thicker than my fingers now. I bought this plant 5 years ago as a tiny little baby succulent. I mean, it was probably like the stem was probably thinner than a chopstick. And this will be the third or fourth time that I will have beheaded this plant. And it is just a prolific grower for starters. But what happens is it grows so well and it gets so much bigger that it gets top heavy. And then now we have what happened here. And because this has flopped over, I've lost some leaves. So I just shoved them in here to root, and then I will pot them up separately at some point and give them to someone. But let me rotate this around so you can see what's actually happening with the top of the plant. Okay, so here is the top of the Graptoveria. It has just gotten massive, you guys, massive. I mean, I think it was probably about like here, if I cut it here, that's about how big it was this time last year. And it just got so big and so heavy. I mean, you guys, it's so, so heavy. I mean, but it's so beautiful. Absolutely love this plant. But dang, okay, so I definitely need to behead this, and I'm gonna film the whole thing for you. We're gonna make a lot of these, by the way. If anybody lives in my area and you want one, let me know, because I'm going to have to remove some of these lower leaves in the process of beheading, and I'm just gonna pot each one up so you could all have your gorgeous Graptoverias that will get this massive over time. I mean, oh my gosh. I'm trying to be careful with it. It just so this just happened out of nowhere, you guys. Like one day I was like, wait, what happened? Like I thought one of the cats had like snapped it. And then I like rotated the pot. I was like, oh my gosh, it just flopped over like a few months ago. I'm like, what the heck? So yes, we need to address that. But let's move on to our last window. Okay, so over here in the last window, we'll start over here with my Alocasia bambino, which also has seen better days. I'm gonna have to do a little work on this plant this year, but I did also just recently repot it into an actual clear nursery pot instead of a clear plastic food container, which it had been in for a long time, because the container was getting a little yellow. I felt like the plastic was starting to go bad and the plant was starting to lose a lot of leaves. And so I decided it was time to do something about that. And I'm glad I did, because I removed a bunch of leaves. This was looking so full before that happened too. I wish you guys could have seen it. But now we are putting out new leaves. So hopefully you can see there's a new leaf coming in there. This is technically now 4 plants in one pot. We have the 2 massively overgrown corms of the original plants in the pot. That is something that I'm going to have to address at some point this year. I will of course film it for you, but there are 2 little corm babies that have popped off down in the bottom, which are helping to fill this plant back in. So it will get back to looking like a very nice full plant, which I absolutely adore this plant. So I'll be super excited when that happens. It's just going to be a process. And this is just what happens with plants, you guys. You're gonna notice like not all my plants look great right now, but I'm not worried about it. Plants just go through phases sometimes. This doesn't mean, like if your plant starts to do this, this doesn't mean that you are horrible at taking care of alocasias. Sometimes the plants just go through phases, and you may realize, like I did, oh, you know what? I think I need to get it out of this pot. I think I need to repot it. And then a few months later, it will go back to looking fabulously. That's just something that happens. So I just don't stress about it. If I have a plant in this tour where something's actually going wrong with the plant, I will tell you, like, I screwed this up, or somehow this got a disease, or whatever. I will let you know. But this is nothing to be worried about. This is just something that will happen with plants periodically, and they will go back to being fine. Now, next to this, we have another succulent. This is an Echeveria. Oh my gosh, I feel like the lighting is just being difficult. So I did recently behead this one as well, and this was just this plant in this pot where you see new growth here. That is from the old stem. So I chopped this off here and then just shoved it in on that side, like literally just shoved it in. Well, I let it sit out and callus over for 24 hours first. Then I shoved it in there, and it's only been like maybe 2 months since I did that. This is definitely fully rooted in. And then we've got two, you can see there's two new growth points coming off of the old stem there. So this is going to be a very nice full pot of Echeveria. Now, just to give you guys an idea, hopefully you can see like the size of this. It's nowhere near as big as the Graptoveria, right? It's like the size of a doorknob, basically. I bought this at the same time as the Graptoveria, and it's pretty much stayed the exact same size. And the Graptoveria was this size when I bought it. And yeah, I don't know why this one doesn't get massively bigger. Maybe that's just the nature of an Echeveria. But yeah, I just looking at them right now, I'm like just baffled over the fact that that Graptoveria has gotten so large. But absolutely love this plant as well. Now over here we have my Hoya croniana super silver. This plant is probably my, oh, what would I say? Maybe my second most prolific flowering Hoya. I would say my Wilbur Graves is the most prolific one, but this one pretty much flowers nonstop too. We do have a flower getting ready to open right there. This is hands down my favorite smelling out of all my Hoya flowers. Has kind of a honeysuckle type smell to it to me. Also, I'm curious, Hoya people out there, what's your favorite color of Hoya flower? I really dig the white Hoya flowers. I don't know. And by the way, I didn't mention this when we were looking at my Wilbur Graves, but the flowers on my Wilbur Graves are actually variegated. The flowers are half pink and half white. It's very fascinating, but I just really like an all white Hoya flower. So the only plants I have that have all white ones right now, well, that have bloomed, because I got a lot of new Hoyas in the last few months that are just babies and haven't bloomed yet. But the only ones that I've had for a while that have white blooms are this Hoya croniana super silver and my Hoya linearis. But absolutely love both of them. This is super silver plant here. Hopefully you can tell those leaves are very silver. On some of them, like this one, you can see some of that green popping through. I actually prefer it when you can see a little bit more of the green coming through, but still a beautiful plant even when it's all silver like that. Definitely a fast growing Hoya for me. Can't recommend them enough. Like, especially if you feel like you can't get a Hoya to bloom, get yourself a croniana. You don't really have to do much of anything. Mine wasn't blooming when I bought it, and within a month it was peduncle central. And then our last plant over here is the one that is hanging. This is another Ceropegia woodii. This is just a standard one, not a variegated one. So these leaves do not have that variegation on them. It is just your standard green leaf with a little bit of silver on it, reddish backsides to these leaves. Now, same thing as with the other one. Over time, these will need a little bit of work. This one has had more work done, if you will, over time. I've had it longer than the other one. So it's a little bit more even looking in terms of the foliage as we go up and down the vines here. But I do need to do some work on the top this year because we are pretty much completely bald. And that means that as I start to lose leaves on these other vines, we're going to have a problem. So I need to do a little bit of what I was describing before up in the top on this one to kind of preemptively prepare for losing leaves and vines that are here right now. So moving into my bedroom now, and real quick, you guys, we're probably going to experience all three cats while in here at some point. You can see Scooter's tail flipping around over there. And just for anybody who doesn't know, Scooter is my cat that only has 3 legs, and he prefers to just scoot rather than learning how to balance and walk on 3 legs. So if you see him scooting by, don't think he's injured or anything like that. It happened to him when he was a kitten. They think he was hit by a car. This was before I adopted him, and they ended up having to amputate his leg. But trust me, he can sprint like nobody's business when he wants to. Like if I picked up that ball over there and threw it right now, he would go faster than you ever would imagined he could go. Hi, Scooter. But this first plant I want to look at is my Tenanthe luberciana. This is one of my largest plants that I own now. I did originally get this as just, hi Theo. Like I said, you guys, we're gonna get them all. This I did get this plant just as a tiny 6-inch plant a little over 5 years ago now, I think, and it has grown into this massive bush. Now, it was bigger than this earlier this year, you guys. I actually cut off it was probably up to here all the way around. I cut a bunch of it off because it was getting in the way of walking in and out of the room. And this plant was starting to kill off a bunch of leaves, which is kind of still killing off some leaves. It needed a desperate trim down, and it has now started to put out a lot of new growth up in the center up in there, which I'm not even sure how well you're going to be able to see it, but it is really kicking off a bunch of new growth in there, which is what I wanted it to do. So it will continue to fill itself back in. It will continue to kind of start to kill off some of these older branches, but that's just what these plants do over time, you guys. So I'm not that worried about it. It's still huge, big, and beautiful, and it's doing fabulously for me. This is just part of plant care and part of plant life. Now, moving on over to here, which, real quick, by the way, you guys, I forgot to mention, this is the furthest distance from the windows in this room, which are giant southern facing windows. For the most part, the biggest windows are behind me. This is super far away. I think it's like 20 something feet away, but it is closer to our next group of plants over here that are in this window, which is an east facing window. However, you guys will see when we get to the other side of the room how big the windows are and understand why this plant does okay being that far away from those windows. But let's move on over here first. This is what I like to refer to as my Calathea corner, even though it's not all Calatheas, but there are 5 Calatheas over here. Those of you who want to know this planter, I did get this from West Elm. I have a matching one on the wall on the other side of the room that we'll look at in a bit. And for those of you who are wondering about the shelves on the walls of my living room, I forgot to mention it, and people always ask, I got those from Nebraska Furniture Mart. Now, over here, all of these Calatheas I have had for close to 5 years or a little over 5 years. Actually, all these plants except for the one on the windowsill over there I've had for that long. And let's start real quick. Well, first thing, as I mentioned before when we were in the living room, Calatheas go through phases where they will kill off leaves and they will push out new leaves, and it's just something they do. Like I said, I have a video all about that. I will link down below in the description for you, but I do have 2 of my Calathea over here that are going through that right now. So let's start over here with my lovely peacock Calathea. Absolutely adore this plant. This is one of my favorite Calatheas, but as you can see, some of the leaves are not looking great right now, and that is because it is going through its kill-off phase where it just decides, hey, I'm done with these older leaves, but then simultaneously pushes out all of these big, perfect new leaves that you're seeing. So all of the non-browned leaves are newer leaves that have come in, and I will cut off the crappy looking leaves a little bit at a time. I actually removed 3 this morning, but a few weeks ago I removed like 5. I just don't want to cut it back too much at once because there's enough green on those leaves for them to continue to photosynthesize, and I just don't want to put the plant through too much shock. So I would say we probably have about maybe another month before it will finish killing off all of these browning leaves and continue to push out these newer leaves, and it will go back to looking absolutely pristine again. It's just one of those things that happens, and that's why anytime I do a houseplant tour, you guys are never going to see perfect plants. Like, every plant is not going to be perfect because plants go through phases like this. Now, one of my favorite things, though, that I always like to show you guys about this plant are the back sides of the leaves with that two-toned reddish color. So beautiful. Absolutely adore this plant. Okay, back here we have one of the non-Calatheas. So this is my Peperomia prostrata, aka string of turtles. This plant, I love this plant. This plant is so easy to take care of, and I feel like it is really forgiving of watering and potentially letting it dry out too much or watering it too soon. A lot of you guys have been reaching out to me lately about struggling with peperomia in general. This is a good one to start with because it just is more forgiving, and it is a bit more like a succulent. So these little leaves that have little kind of turtle shell looking designs on them, they are thick and they store water. And so that is why, oh, one came off, but that will actually help me show you. It is a super, super thick leaf that is storing water. And so that's why these plants can dry out a bit more without having a complete freak out versus like a Peperomia caparata. But this plant has just done well for me. Like I said, over the years, it is a very long. We are nearing the floor again. I have actually only trimmed this plant like maybe not even once a year. I'd say maybe 3 times in the entire, like, 5 years I've had it. So, it's not a crazy fast grower, but the thing is sometimes over time it will kill off older vines, which it did do that a lot this year, but then it pushes out all these new vines. So hopefully you can see some of these shorter vines up here. This is all new growth that it just popped out of its own accord. So over time, a lot of the longer vines, when they die off, they just die off and I pull them off and then I don't ever end up having to actually trim the plant, if that makes sense. I should probably do a video just on this plant at some point. Comment down below and let me know if you would be interested in that, but absolutely love it. But moving on to the center planter here, we have some more Calathea, which, quick reminder, you guys, technically these have been reclassified as Gopursia, but nobody's gotten on board with calling them Gopursia, so I still just refer to them as Calathea. And I just realized, I think I said a second ago that I've had every plant over in this area for like approximately 5 years, but I was incorrect. This is my Calathea fasciata. This is actually my newest Calathea. I will have had that for 2 years in April, I think, but everybody else I've had for around 5 years. So up here in the top, we do have my Calathea consina, which is also known as a Calathea Freddy, which is why I refer to that plant as Fred for short. And then down here, we do have my rattlesnake Calathea, which this is one of the few Calatheas that the whole name had to change when it got moved and reclassified as Gopursia. So this was a Calathea lancifolia. There was already a lancifolia in the Gopursia genus when they moved it, so it is now a Gopursia insignis, just so you guys know. But Fred up here just recently flowered again, so he's going through his leaf kill-off phase. Fred does this more than any of my Calathea. Every time he flowers, and he flowers more than any of my Calathea, he goes through this, I'm going to yellow up my leaves, kill them off phase, but then simultaneously pumps out new leaves like the one you see down there and fills himself back in. So this happens like minimum 4 times a year. It's pretty seasonal actually, now that I think about it. Sometimes I get this going on more than once a season, but we're just in that point right now, which is why he's looking a little bit yellow. Fred also needs a repot. I was watering him earlier and I peeked through the drainage holes and there was about an inch of space between the bottom of the soil and the drainage holes because he has giant tubers that have developed and are pushing him up out of the pot. So he is definitely on the repot list for this year. Now, as I mentioned, newest Calathea right here, Calathea fasciata. Full name will be up on screen for you because I always forget exactly what it is. But this is a very round-leafed Calathea. Absolutely love it. Reminds me a little bit of a Calathea orbifolia, which we will see mine in the kitchen later, but it's got the darker kind of striping on it, and it's a slightly more oval-shaped leaf. Orbifolia is definitely a bit rounder. Now, this Calathea has been a little bit difficult for me, I will say. It is not my fastest growing Calathea. It has really struggled. It does go through leaf kill-off phases, but then it puts out new leaves. It did kill off some of its oldest leaves last week, but I can see right back here that we have a new leaf pushing in. We might have some more that I haven't even seen yet. Looks like maybe that's the only one coming in right now. So definitely a little bit more difficult so far, but also this plant went through some pest issues right after I got it. It also got completely underwater while I was on vacation one time and killed off all its leaves. It's been through the ringer, and it was just a small little like 3-inch pot, 2-leaf situation when I originally got it. So we're figuring it out. We're figuring it out. It's definitely well rooted now. It's definitely been giving me less trouble and more leaves than it did in 2025. So let's hope that trend continues in 2026. Now, the rattlesnake Calathea here, I don't know how many of you will have seen the video I did because it's like a 4 or 5 year old video now. I guess 4 years old. One of the first videos I did on this channel was called Is It Really Dead? And it featured this plant as a little half leaf plant, literally one leaf and not even a full leaf, half a leaf, and it looked like it was dying. It was in a little, I think 2 or 3 inch pot at the time. Basically, I bought this plant as a severely underwatered 4 inch plant in a shop. I didn't realize how underwatered it was. It was so underwatered that we were in a dry rot situation and I did not know. And I did my best to salvage it. And then I finally decided I need to just let it be and see what happens. And here we are. We are now bigger than we were when I originally bought the plant. It is in a 6 inch pot, but even the size of the foliage is like twice as big as it was when I originally bought the plant. So definitely came back, was not the fastest process, but I absolutely love this plant. I do find the rattlesnake calatheas to be a bit easier in my experience anyway than some of the other calatheas. Once again, they just seem to be a little bit more forgiving than, for example, the fasciata over there. I don't really experience the leaf kill-off phases that I talk about with like Fred and the peacock calathea that we looked at and the fasciata. This plant doesn't really do that as much. It just tends to do what you're used to with other plants where it just kills off an old leaf every now and again. That's not to say that it won't do that. Just in my experience, in my environment, that has not been what has happened. It's a pretty laid back plant. Now, back here is the plant that has probably given me more trouble than any other plant in my collection this year. This is a Pilea glauca, and it definitely was way more full and way more trailing this time last year than it is now. And I don't know, Pileas are a little bit fussy in my experience. If you agree with me, comment down below. But I actually am kind of surprised that this plant is kind of on the comeback. So I thought for sure it was dead. I kind of just started ignoring it and probably let it get too dry, or maybe perhaps I wasn't letting it get dry enough between waterings, because when I started to neglect it a bit because I thought it was dead, it finally started growing again. So all of this growth right here, this was bald. There was like these few long vines and nothing else a few months ago. And now all of this is kind of sprouted off. So it seems to be on the comeback. I've come to the conclusion that I need to let it dry out a little bit more than I was letting it dry out. And we'll just see what happens. But this is one of those plants where if it just decides eventually it's going to die on me, I probably won't try again. It's been a little bit more of a hassle than I would like it to be at the current place I am in my plant journey. But it is a gorgeous plant, especially when it is all full. So hopefully I figured out what was going on and we can get back to a big, lush plant. And that just leaves my Calathea rosa picta, which I call Rose or Rosie for short. This actually was very similar to the fasciata before I got the fasciata. When I first got Rose, she was one of my fussiest, kind of most difficult Calathea. And then a couple of years ago, she just, everything just clicked. And she decided, you know what? I guess I'm going to be happy here because this is where I'm living now. And she has just gotten bigger and more beautiful since then. She has stopped doing as much of that leaf die-off situation as she used to do, which this may be something too, that just as these plants mature, those cycles stop happening as frequently. That has not really been my experience on most of them. It's just Rose. Just Rose. But look how beautiful Rose is. I mean, she is so full. She is still pumping out a ton of new growth. She did lose a few leaves, just her oldest leaves. A couple weeks ago, I trimmed them off, but she was still pumping out new leaves. Like, I'm pretty sure this one is a new one. It's not even fully hardened off yet. Let me see if I see any. Looks like that's the last new one that came in, but she has just been continuing to grow even throughout the winter months, and she is just looking gorgeous. I need to find her a new cover pot though, because when I put her in this clear pot, which I don't even remember how long ago it was now, I didn't have a cover pot big enough, so I just stuck her back in her other one. She looks ridiculous. I really need to go pot shopping this year, you guys. I need some new planters. We got to get things fitting correctly and not looking like she's a big girl plant now, still wearing toddler pants, if you will. Okay, so coming over here, we're now on the opposite wall from the plants we were just looking at. We're also about halfway across the room from the first plant we looked at and the giant southern facing windows that you'll see in a second, next to a west facing door. So these two plants here do get direct light part of the day from the southern facing windows this time of year because the sun is tracking more southerly in the sky. However, it has not really impacted them poorly. I think because they're far enough away from those windows that even though it's direct, it's just not close enough to be super intense, if that makes sense. And then the light coming from this door is just indirect because they're kind of off to the side of it. So let's talk about the Calathea warskawestii first. You will notice there are some beneficial bug sachets hanging from this plant, and that is because in 2025, I got pests on this plant for the first time. I got flat mites, and then I also discovered a few spider mites amongst the flat mites, just to add insult to injury. But I did catch the spider mites before any webbing started or anything like that. It was really the flat mites that were the biggest issue, and I'm still not 100% certain that I've gotten rid of them. Some of what you're going to see on these leaves, you see that kind of browning, speckling, yellowing right there, that is flat mite damage. That is how it presented on this particular plant. I do find, depending on the plant, it presents differently, but this was my first clue that something was going on. Now, I did lose a ton of leaves because of this, so this plant was looking way more full this time last year. All of this space here and over here was filled in, but I chose to cut off some of the worst looking leaves because I knew they were the most infested, and sometimes that's just what you have to do. But this is a calathea and it's a rhizome based plant, so it will fill itself back in very easily. It's pumped out a bunch of new growth. It will be fine. It will get back to looking great. It doesn't look that bad, honestly, in my opinion, right now. But then again, I also just know what it used to look like, so that kind of annoys me. But it did bloom again for me almost right on time this year. So every year that I've had this plant, and I've had it for, I believe, 4 years now, it has bloomed on New Year's Day. This year, it bloomed a week early. There are, let's see, one, two, I think we got four. Yeah, three, four. This bloom already died and I cut it off. So 4 flowers this time. I think last year we ended up with 5. But yeah, it only blooms once a year for me, and it's always right around New Year's every single time. So the plant is doing well. But my goal for 2026 with this one is to get it back to its more full and luscious self and make sure that we have eradicated the pests. Now, down below this is a relatively newer Hoya that I own. This is a Hoya Matilde. This is the silver splash variety of Matilde with these beautiful dark green leaves, kind of oval shaped. And this plant I got very concerned about because when I discovered flat mites on this one, flat mites love Hoyas, and for all I know, maybe the flat mites came from this plant, which was imported from Aroid Asia. It was a gift from Aroid Asia in a box of plants that they sent me. And so this plant had not really been growing at all, which also makes me think that it maybe also had flat mites until I started doing the beneficial bug treatments, which this one got beneficial sachets as well. They were just blocking our view of the plant, so I took them off a second ago. But this one got beneficial bugs as well, and now we do have this new vine starting to push out over here. So hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully it was bugs for the reason it wasn't growing. Hopefully it didn't have bugs, but hopefully if that was the situation, that's just what was going on, and now we're going to grow just fine here. And I do like the fact that I have this one a little bit further away from the southern facing windows because everybody's who I see, I really like them when they're super dark green. And the closer you get to a window, the more they're going to actually stay this brighter green color, which those are just bright green because they're new leaves that haven't hardened off. But if I get this right up in a southern facing window, they're going to turn more of that shade of green because of the amount of light that it would be getting. So that is why I chose to put it over here on the dresser. And so far, so good with the cats. But as it gets longer, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But they've been a lot better this year, you guys, with the plants in general. But moving on the other side of the door here, we have what is probably the darkest corner of the room, which isn't even that dark because, like I said, giant southern facing windows. And technically, this skinny window right here is southwest-ish facing, but it gets a lot of light like a southern-facing window. But down here, we do have my Aglaonema Maria, who I just realized still has a very old beneficial bug sachet on there that I probably need to remove at some point. Kind of forgot it was there because it's tucked so neatly into all of this beautiful foliage. Now, this is one of two Aglaonemas that I still own, and it is the oldest one that I own. I think I've had this one for probably 4.5 years. I love Aglaonema, but I don't know, I just don't have a lot of good places in my home for them. They really don't want crazy intense light, and I have a lot of crazy intense light in my house. And even this one I had in my office in north facing windows at one point, and that I discovered really was not enough light. It really has liked living here where it's getting kind of the indirect light from the west window here and indirect light from the southern windows over here. I did actually in 2025 attempt moving it over here, and it threw a fit because it was getting so much direct light from the southern facing windows there. It was not happy. So this is where she's happy, but now that I know that this is what Aglaonema is like, I don't have a lot of spots like this in my house. So I got a very beautiful Aglaonema from overseas, from Aroid Asia, that is in my kitchen. We'll see it when we get to the kitchen, that I absolutely love, but I have no clue where I'm going to put it. But we do need to repot Maria this year. She is in one of those plastic pot liners, and she's not loving life in that plastic pot liner. So that is definitely the number one thing that needs to happen with this plant in 2026. And then up here, and you can't even see the planter right now, but this is in a planter that is matching the West Elm planters that we saw. Hopefully you can kind of see up in there. It's matching the planters that we saw on the other side of the room in the Calathea corner. But this plant is my Tradescantia. Oh my gosh, I just drew a complete blank. Albovitata, I think. Once again, it will be up on screen for you. This is the only Tradescantia that I have indoors. I absolutely love this plant. Now, Tradescantias can look rough part of the year, and they do look rough part of the year. Typically just once a year I go through this with them, and we're going through it right now. But when your Tradescantias start to look a little straggly, and they start to get yellowing vines like this, like what you're seeing here, and they'll start to kill off all these leaves, and this will just start to look like crap. All you gotta do is cut it back. Cut it off, cut it back. I do it gradually because as you cut it back, it will start to push out a ton of new vines, which is what's happening up here. So it is starting to grow all of this new growth here that is going to replace all of the scraggly yellowing growth down here. So once again, I just periodically trim that old stuff off, and then I try to wait till like these get a little bit longer, and then I trim from far back to front, if that makes sense. So the ones that are furthest away, I remove those first. So that way it never just looks like super short, like never looks like I just cut it way back up. And I just find it to be more visually appealing over the course of the year doing it that way than just having it look kind of like you just drastically chopped it back, which you don't necessarily need to do. But it's been living in this pot, in this planter, in this location for close to 5 years now. I mean, I know I need to repot it because these things get root bound super fast, but they just replace themselves so easily that they don't really seem to care that they're root bound. So I probably, if I do repot it, I'll probably do this year, I'll probably do what I did the last time. I just root pruned it, completely chopped like half the roots off, which is more than I should have done, and repotted it back up, and it did fine. But now we're gonna move on to the plants that are directly in front of the very large southern facing, and then also, like I said, southwest facing, southeast-ish facing windows here. These plants definitely get direct light, as you can see. Hopefully the lighting is not gonna be so crazy that we can't tell what's going on. And we are gonna start with my Ficus elastica teneke, which I have angled an awkward direction right now. That's not how it normally is positioned or how I would have it positioned, but it has a new branch it is working on pushing out, and I wanted that new branch that you can see right here to be facing directly towards this window to encourage the growth of that branch. So that is what's going on there. There is another branch that is trying to pop off close to that one as well. So this is about to be a mini more branched, I guess I should say, Ficus elastica teneke. Now it is going to take a little bit of time for those branches to catch up to the main branch that you're seeing here, but it will happen. And thankfully I have a very tall ceilings. So I have room for a nice tall Ficus elastica in here, which is the goal, is to get this plant to looking like that. However, I have had a little bit of, I think, a miswatering issue recently with this plant. I started watering in situ, which means I didn't take it out of its cover pot. I was just watering it and leaving it there instead of how I usually do, which is take it out and put it in a drainage tray. And that's when I started noticing the problems. And then I also noticed that the roots had grown through the bottom of the pot and were coiling in the water that was in the bottom. And so, yeah, I think that was a bad idea. So I'm not watering in situ anymore, but just so you can see what clued me into the fact that I was probably having watering issues, I started getting brown spots like this. I've never had that before. I've had this plant for 5 years, never had this happen until I started watering in situ. And so I immediately stopped doing that. And it did this on a few of the lower leaves as well. So I really think I just really screwed up with that. And so we're not going to do it anymore. And we'll get this plant back to looking its best. Now, we do have another Ficus elastica on the other side of the room that we will look at in a second. But let's look at these Hoyas that are directly up in the windows first, if we can. And I say if we can because this is where the lighting gets crazy. Also, we had like 20-degree weather last night, so I had to frost cover some of the plants outside. That is what you're seeing. Let me see if I can get this lighting bumped up a bit without it being crazy. It's so hard to film directly in these windows. Hopefully that is okay. So this is my Hoya carnosa compacta outer variegated. So this is the one that has white on the edges of the leaves versus just all green or in the center of the leaves. This plant is one of my most prolific blooming Hoyas, which naturally it's not actually in bloom right now, but it is getting ready to. There is a bloom right there that is coming in. Probably be a few more weeks before that actually opens, but there are so many peduncles all over this plant. And when it is in bloom, it is in full bloom. So this plant, super slow grower for sure, but mine has gotten quite a bit longer over the course of 2025. I feel like it's kind of maybe picked up its pace a little bit, but not like too much. But also it just kind of curls up a lot. So like, see how tight this wants to curl in? If it was straighter, it would look a lot longer. It's just what this plant does for me, but I still absolutely love it. Now, as I mentioned with the Hoya Matilde that we looked at, if I had it directly in a southern facing window like this, the leaves would be lighter. And here's a perfect example to show you what I'm talking about. And this plant is doing absolutely fine with this level of light, you guys. But hopefully you can see how almost yellow these leaves look. This is just from too much light. And especially in the summer when they're touching this window gets a bit hot. Ideally, I wish I had a wider windowsill so I could avoid that. But I mean, the plant is fine. But if you compare that to how the leaves look down here, you will notice they're a lot darker in color because they're hanging further down. They're not getting that direct light. So that's why I don't have the Matilde over here, is because I don't want to lose that dark green. Ideally, like, do I like the coloring, that coloring on the leaves? Not really, but it's really just on the side that's facing the window anyway, which I can't see unless I take the plant out of here to water. The rest of it still looks really dark green and everything on this side, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But then over here, we have my Hoya Crimson Princess, also known as a Hoya Exotica tricolor, I believe. And same situation here. This plant's got yellower and it gets the maroon sun stressing on the leaves over here just because it's getting so much light, versus if we come over here where it's not getting that direct light, you get that more cream colored with the darker green on the edges. That is just the nature of this window. If I want this plant to look like this, I'm gonna have to move it somewhere else. And honestly, this one bugs me a little bit more than the Carnosa compacta. I actually would like this one to look more like that. I just need to figure out where I'm gonna move it to do that. But this is another prolific flowering Hoya for me. Once again, not in bloom, but I did see one starting. Where was it? Back there. There's a bloom getting ready to come in there, but you can see all of these peduncles like everywhere, all over this plant. So it is another prolific bloomer. And if you want your Hoyas to be prolific bloomers, you can put them in a southern facing window. That for sure will make them bloom. That is one of the downsides of putting the Matilde where I put it, is that it's going to be less inclined to bloom. Doesn't mean it won't bloom. but it might not be as prolific as if I had it in a southern facing window. So it is a bit of a trade-off with Hoyas sometimes. Not all Hoyas are that way, but this has definitely been a very easy laid back Hoya for me. And yeah, I mean, I don't think with my Hoyas much is going to change this year in terms of my care or do I need to do things differently. I just keep doing what I'm doing and they all seem to do fine. I really do find them to be very enjoyable, laid back plants. Now, before we look at the next Ficus elastica, we've got a plant up here which the sun is right behind it. So I don't know how well we're going to be able to see it. Let's see, maybe if I come around this way. But this is a sedum daisy-phylum, I believe. This is the same kind of plant, or same genus, as the plant that we were looking at in the living room that's known commonly as a donkey's tail, but these are much smaller leaves and much smaller vines, but same growth pattern as the donkey's tail. And I just thought this plant was so cute when I first saw it, and it was not trailing at all when I got it. It was just like a little mound in the top of this pot. I've never repotted it. But I think I need to do some kind of cleanup on this plant this year because it's got so many aerial roots. Do you guys see all the brown in there? That's not like dying leaves. It's like just aerial roots coming off of the vines. I'm kind of wondering if I haven't been watering it enough. I might repot it this year just to get it in a clear pot so I can have a better gauge of how quickly it's drying out. But yeah, I still like it. I just want to spruce it up in 2026. But moving on to our next Ficus elastica. This is the Ficus elastica ruby. Definitely getting direct sunlight on it right now. And this plant has done well for me, about as well for me as my Ficus elastica teneke, except that in 2025, probably about, I'd say in the third quarter of the year, it decided to start losing a lot of its bottom leaves. And I think maybe it just had started drying out more quickly and I hadn't noticed and I wasn't watering it soon enough. And we just dropped a ton of lower leaves. And so I'd been wanting to do a forced branch situation on this plant and I've been wanting to film it for you guys. I had done the same thing on my teneke before this. And so I will link that video because it's a super easy branching process that doesn't involve cutting your plant at all. I will link that video down below in the description for you as well. It works like a charm. And let me show you what's going on with this plant. This is definitely going to mess with the lighting, so let me reposition. Okay, so hopefully this lighting is okay, but as you can see, we lost a lot of leaves, but we have new branches going on. So there is a new branch coming in here, there's a new branch coming in right behind it, and there's another one coming in down here. Now, these are all on the same side, which is going to make this plant become a little bit too heavy on this side. However, it's going to put most of its energy into this branch right now to the point that this one will possibly quit growing, which would leave just this one. But even if they all continue to grow, it's real easy to just cut off a branch you don't need, you guys. I would rather do this forced branching method that I was talking about and get 3 branches and have to cut 1 or 2 off because the plant ends up being too heavy on this side than do all the other things that are not as easy to control where a branch is going to develop, if you know what I mean. I would rather have more control over where the branch develops, which I did, and have to cut one off than the other way around. So yeah, I'm just excited to see this plant become more full in 2026. And then coming over here, so hopefully you can see the drastic differences in lighting in this room throughout the day. So for example, my Alphalandra squarosa, commonly known as the zebra plant up here, is getting virtually no direct light at the moment, while the Pearls and Jade pothos is getting completely blasted. And George is asleep on the bed. Hi, Georgie. Excuse my unmade bed, but I didn't want to disturb George. So let's start with the zebra plant, which hopefully we will be able to see okay from a lighting standpoint here. This plant, you guys, very sensitive plant, likes to drop leaves a lot. That is why some of these lower stems look a bit bald. I do just periodically cut this plant way back. That's why you can see we got a new growth point here. Probably been a year and a half ago now that I cut that off. And then it continues to drop leaves over time. It's just what it does. I don't know. It's a tree, you guys. Like in the wild, it's bare at the bottom and got leaves at the top. So I don't know why we stress about it doing it in our homes. But the nice thing is that when I do prune it back frequently, which is what happened on these branches over here, I got more than one new branch that came in. So it's kind of helped mask what's going on over here. I am going to need to cut this one back at some point in 2026. And hopefully I'll get two branches instead of just one on that one this time. But I do like the look of this plant with its striped leaves and when it gets its beautiful yellow flowers, which unfortunately it flowered for me right when I was getting ready to chop it back the last time I chopped it back. So I didn't get to enjoy the flowers for very long, but it will start to bloom again, probably in the spring or summertime for me. But moving on to my Epiprimnum aureum pearls and jade, which hopefully the lighting is okay for. Now this plant has gotten crazy long and is trailing the floor, and the cats have been really good about it, you guys. Normally I wouldn't even let it get this long because I would be worried they're gonna chew on it, but they've been doing a lot better over the course of the last year about not chewing on the plants. But this plant definitely needs a trim, definitely needs a repot. It's been in this pot for probably close to 3 or 3.5 years now. It started killing off a lot of its older leaves more quickly. It's drying out more quickly. It needs to be repotted. That is the main goal for this plant in 2026 for sure. Okay, so we're moving on to the bathroom. Just to give you an idea, I don't have as many plants in here as I used to because some of them have been quarantined upstairs because of some pests and I haven't moved them back down yet. Normally it would look a little more full in the windowsill, but we're going to get up close and check on the hanging plant first. And just so you know, this is an east-facing window. So this is my philodendron cordatum, arguably not looking its best. This plant in 2025 started going downhill a bit for me. And I think it's because instead of giving it a full repot the last time it needed it, I just gave it a pot extension. And it was in one of those pot liners that I've mentioned that a lot of the plants aren't liking. And I think it was just a bad move. A lot of the vines lost all of their leaves and I had to cut them off. We still have some long vines, but they are looking a little bit bald up top. They still had enough leaves down below that I didn't want to cut them completely off and just take too much foliage off the plant. I finally repotted it more appropriately in 2025 and it is starting to fill back in. So we're seeing more growth up here at the top. I'm not sure how obvious it's going to be with the macrame hanger in the way and whatnot, but it's going to take a while for them to grow in and become long and lush again. But that's okay. I'll get it back looking that way eventually over time. And then coming down here, I realized I've been talking about how good the cats have been, and then I just noticed this. That leaf has been chewed on by a cat. Thankfully, this is Maranta. It's non-toxic. There's a little teeth marks over here too, so someone's been a bad boy. Not happy. But this is my all green Maranta, so prayer plant family plant. This Maranta, out of my 3 Marantas, this one has not grown the best for me. It also goes through the leaf kill-off cycle way more frequently than the other Marantas, and it did just recently do that. It killed off a ton of leaves, and it's getting ready to start sprouting off a bunch more. Now, with my Marantas, I do find when they kill off leaves, sometimes they kill off whole vines, and it will take a hot minute, but then it will start to push a whole new vine out of the soil somewhere around here because once again, these are rhizome-based plants, and that's just kind of what they do. But this is not my most favorite Maranta just because it tends to do this. It never really wants to get really full and trailing compared to my other two, and I just really want it to get kind of more full and better looking over the course of this year, which it will. It always does better in the summer for me. This room just gets quite chilly in the winter, and so I think that kind of contributes to it. And then moving over to this side of the windowsill, this is a Dischidia. And if you guys are not familiar, Dischidia are related to Hoya. The thing I like more about Dischidia though is unlike Hoya, who have kind of brown woody stems, with your Dischidias, you get these vines that are basically the same color as the leaves. So they're green and they stay green. Now this plant in particular has really cute, tiny heart-shaped leaves. They are variegated. I don't know how well you can tell on screen, but they are outer variegated. But then you do sometimes get all white leaves. They do not last forever. They die off more quickly. That's why some of these vines look more bald. But I had a little bit of a setback in 2025 with this plant. I knew when I got it that there were 3 plants in the pot. I knew the plants were plugs, the spongy type plugs, And I knew I needed to repot it sooner rather than later to get those off, and I waited too long. So I did have a little bit of a rot situation. I had to down pot it to a 3-inch pot from a 4-inch pot, had hardly any roots left, was totally panicking. Really didn't need to panic. It killed off almost all of the vines that were all white, and it killed off some old leaves from the other vines, but that was it. And now is pushing out a whole new vine right here. This is the first new vine I've gotten since I did the repotting rescue situation, so I'm super happy about that. It is fully rerooted, like massively fully rerooted in there, and it is doing fabulously. But then coming down here, this is actually a relatively recent addition to the bathroom. This plant was previously living in the window in my kitchen over the sink, and I learned over the summer that this plant really didn't want as much light it was getting in that west-facing window. It was getting bleached out leaves, killing off leaves more quickly, so I did decide to move it in here, and I was kind of concerned that being against this, it wasn't going to get enough light, but it's been loving life since I moved it in here. And it is in leca. I did repot it from a smaller leca container to a bigger leca container in 2025. And it did this weird flopping out thing and looked really bald in the center for a while, but as you can see, it has filled itself in up on top again. So it's actually looking better than it's ever looked in my personal opinion. I feel like I started to say the name of this and then I got distracted. This is a Syngonium berry illusion, I think. It was an illusion series Syngonium. It was not labeled when I got it, but I'm pretty sure it's a berry. Berries have kind of slightly pink veining on the leaves and kind of a green beyond that, and that's what I see on this. There are a few other Syngonium Illusion series that look similar to berry, so it could be one of those, but I think it's a berry. It's definitely Illusion series though. Those do grow smaller and more compact, which is another thing I really like about them. Absolutely love how things have been going with this plant, so I hope things just continue going how they've been going through 2026. But last, and certainly not least, in the bathroom is my Calathea White Fusion, or Calathea Fusion White, however you want to say it. I absolutely love this plant. This is one of my all-time favorite plants. I bought it as a tiny little 6-inch plant. It is now in, I think, a 10-inch, 8 or 10-inch pot. Maybe it's a 9-inch pot, somewhere around there. This thing has just gotten massive. This thing is so full, you guys. I actually had to, maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago now, I cut off so much foliage off of this plant, and I thought it needed to be repotted. I slipped it out of its pot. It did not need to be repotted, but it was so full that it was killing off leaves, and it's doing it again now. That's how quickly it's been growing for me. So hopefully you can see this leaf is getting a little bit yellow, a little bit crispy, because this plant doesn't get crispy leaves for me unless it's getting ready to kill off leaves. And so it was doing that on a lot of the leaves. And I went and I chopped an insane number of leaves off. I probably have something flashing up on screen for you showing you how many I chopped off. But I wasn't worried about it because I knew it was trying to push out new growth down below near the soil, and it did. And that's what you're seeing up here now. This is all new growth that has come in from down below. And even today, before I started filming, I cut 10 more older leaves off of this plant, and I'm not worried about it. But also, just imagine, because you saw how much I cut off, how much fuller this plant would look if I hadn't cut all of those leaves off. I mean, this thing is a massive bush now, but it's doing fabulously. I am probably going to need to thin out some more leaves here in the next few months, but it's just crazy, all of the new growth. It's more easy for you to understand if I show you from the other side. Hold on. Okay, I recognize the lighting is a little bit funky, but do you see all of the purple? All of those bright purple leaves are the new leaves. Now, this plant does have purple backsides to its leaves, obviously, but the older the leaves get, the more they lose their purple. So look, that's an old leaf, that's an old leaf. So everything you see that's not purple are old. Everything you see that is purple is new. That's how much new growth this plant has just been spouting off from the center of the plant and just filling itself massively back in. So that's why I'm saying I'm not worried about it. She's gonna be fine, even if I cut off a ton of leaves, but oh, I love her so, so much. Highly recommend, you guys. I know a lot of people are scared of this one, but don't be. So moving on to the dining room, there are 2 north-facing windows behind me, but this plant is facing directly between them, which is why some of its leaves are tilting this way towards that window and some of its leaves are tilting that way. But this is my philodendron ploumanii. Now, this is the last crawling philodendron I have left. Absolutely love it, don't get me wrong, but it is a space hog for sure. I just really don't have room for it, which is why I have it listed for sale. So if you live in the Dallas area and you're interested, drop a comment below. But this plant did at the beginning of 2025 have spider mites, got those under control, then propagated this plant. This is the continuation of the original plant. I just placed it next to a new pot and let it grow into it. And I think I actually severed it before the roots were at the level it should have been. And I think that's why I got this yellowing on some of the edges of the leaves. But it's still growing fabulously. It's loving life in LECA. And I do have one of the propagations left down here, which is actually, let me see if I can get y'all tilted, sprouting off 2 new growth points. And then there's also a little third growth point that's trying to do something too. Once again, absolutely love it. I just don't really have a good spot for it. It takes up too much space on this table. Just, yeah, I don't have a good spot for it. So I have 2 of my Epiprimnum aureums living over here. So I have what is commonly known as Marble Queen Pothos in the back there, and we have my Neon Pothos in the front here. Now, you guys are going to see a few weird things in this room, like this Trivial Pursuit game right there. And there's also a textbook on the floor that you hopefully can't see right now. I had ants recently in this room, so I had to have ant baits put down, and I didn't want the cats messing with them. So I stuck the Trivial Pursuit game on one of them and a textbook on the other one. And then behind me, there's another one in a corner with a textbook on it. So that stuff is not normally here, just so you know. But my Marble Queen Pothos here is the first Epiprimnum I ever got. Absolutely love her. She is long overdue for a trim. She is starting to trail across the floor again. And once again, in the past, I wouldn't have been able to let that happen. It would have caused an issue with the cats, but they're being so much better, you guys. So much better. Now, I do need to do a repot and a root prune on her. She's getting a little bald on some of her vines. I just know she's massively root bound. I've gone way too long since the last time I repotted her. I did root prune her last time. She does great with that. She just needs a little sprucing up is what she needs. So that is the goal for 2026. Now, the Neon Pothos down here is a plant that was grown from just a few little cuttings that were sent to me by one of you guys who lives in Hawaii. And it has definitely taken off more in the past year than it had previously. I did also drape one of the vines across the top here and pin it down. And I think I did that with one of the other vines too. Or was that the only one I did? Looks like that's the only one I did. But I think it has started to root in there now. And so what I'm eventually going to do is give it a little trim so it will turn into more vines. So the goal for this year with this plant is just to get this more full. And then coming over here by this north-facing window, I rotated this a little bit so you guys could see it better. This is my Stromanthe Trio Star, also known as a tricolor ginger plant. Prayer plant family plant, so it does like to do that occasional leaf kill off thing that I've talked about. This one is definitely going through it now. It's actually kind of been going through it since I repotted it. I think I just struggled to figure out how long to let it dry out after putting it in a bigger pot. And honestly, these leaves that you see are yellow. They've been like that for like 8 months. It's not actually killing it all the way off, so I've just been leaving it there, but I did recently trim off a lot of the yellow ones just to encourage some new leaves to come in. But I'm not worried about it once again because it is pushing out a lot of new leaves. The leaves that you see that look good are new leaves, and if we get further in here, you can see there's a new leaf coming in right here. There's a whole new stalk coming in right there. There's a new leaf coming in over there. So I'm not worried about it. We're just going through a phase. So the goal this year is just to get it back to looking good and not having these yellowing leaves. And I feel confident I can do that because just in the last few months, we're really starting to turn it around. Now we have one other plant to look at in here. It's way up here. So let me get resituated so I can make sure we have good lighting. Okay, so hopefully that lighting is okay. So this is my Philodendron Brazil. Now, this time last year, it was probably looking a bit more full, and that is for several reasons. One, unbeknownst to me, the vines had started climbing back up to themselves, and it was making it look way more full than it actually was. So I did finally get around to repotting this in 2025, and unfortunately, I discovered that as it had gotten super root bound, I had not done a good job at all of keeping up with the fact that it was needing to be watered more frequently, and I dry rotted it. So I had to do an emergency repot on it. It lost a lot of its upper leaves. We lost a few vines in the repot process because they just like broke off. I don't even know what happened. And in that process, I ended up having to untangle the vines. So now it just doesn't look as full because it lost some vines, it lost some leaves, but then primarily because the vines weren't growing back up themselves, although they have started to do it again. So it will probably start to look more full over the course of this year. But it has since I repotted it, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but it has started to put off a lot of new vine growth up at the top there. Hopefully you can see that. So it's definitely going to fill itself back in this year. I still think she looks pretty good though, honestly. I don't think she looks that bad, but we're going to get her back to her former glory over the course of the year. Okay, so we're in my office now, and we are starting out with the only plant that lives on my desk. This is my Syngonium white butterfly. It is definitely a large plant. My back is all the way against the wall here, and I can't really get the whole thing in frame for you, but it is quite a bushy plant. Definitely probably would be a little bit happier closer to the windows because there's only two windows in this room that are directly behind me that are both north facing. This plant does kind of face closer towards the wall because like I said, my back is against the wall and I'm centered across from this plant. But it does get enough light to be okay. Syngoniums really do okay with pretty low levels of light. Now, the only problem with this is that this is the only side of this plant that looks good. The other side is completely bald, basically, because it is obviously pointing all of its leaves and its growth towards the light. So I actually get a horrible view of this plant when I'm working at my desk because I'm sitting right over here and I just get the bald side all day and I never get to see this beautiful side, which is one of the downsides of having a plant on my desk here, but that's kind of how it's going to go with any plant on my desk. So I'm just going to have to learn to live with that. But this plant has behaved pretty much the same over the course of the last year as it has always behaved for me. Does get some straggly vines, kind of like you can see there's one down there periodically that just start putting out smaller and smaller leaves. I just trim those back when it happens because I like it to be more of a bushy appearance like this. But this plant is probably due for a root prune and repot this year. It has been probably close to 3.5 years that it's been in its current pot, and Syngoniums root like nobody's business. So probably need to give it a little bit of a refresh in 2026. Okay, so moving over here, and you actually can still see some of the Syngonium white butterfly here, so that gives you an idea of how far it is from this north-facing window here. But over here we have another Syngonium, and we have the Matophyllum bipinnatifidum, which this used to be classified as a type of philodendron. Lots of times you'll see it labeled as a split leaf philodendron. Now, north facing window is not the most ideal thing for a large sun loving plant like this. However, it's done fairly well here for me. We did have quite a few leaves, older leaves, die off over the course of the last year, but it has also recently been pushing out new growth, including an entire new plantlet, which hopefully you can see. There is a baby leaf right there growing into the Syngonium. That is from the new plantlet that kicked off on the other side of the existing ones. That just happened a couple of months ago. So we're just going through a little bit of a phase, I think. I probably need to check this for a repot. It's been a few years, but in my experience, these plants, they don't get root bound super crazy fast unless you let the aerial roots grow back into the pot, which I wasn't doing a good job of stopping them from growing back into the pot. So a lot of them have grown into the pot and out through the drainage holes in the bottom. So I'm pretty sure we're pretty root bound just because that happened. But let me resituate us to look at the Syngonium. Okay, I was worried about how lighting was going to be in here, but I think we're at like this golden time of day where it's actually kind of nice, and it's not cloudy outside today, which is nice for in here because otherwise it'd be too dark. But this is my Syngonium Glogo. Absolutely love this Syngonium. This is another mini type of Syngonium. So the white butterfly that we're looking at is one of two full-size, that even sounds wrong, two non-mini varieties of Syngonium that I own. The other one is the red spot tricolor that we looked at in the living room. But this plant grows in a more compact, smaller form, like the syngonium that we looked at in my bathroom. And it has these gorgeous green leaves with this kind of white patterning on them that almost is a little bit reminiscent of a syngonium batik, but in a smaller form. And I just cannot get enough of this syngonium in particular, or just the compact syngoniums in general, because like I never have to trim them, you guys. I've never cut any of the vines on this beyond removing dead leaves as they die off, but I've never trimmed vines like I was saying I have done repeatedly on my Syngonium white butterfly. They just grow more like an upright plant. So if you like the look of Syngoniums, but you don't really want to let them trail and you don't want to deal with putting them on a pole because you can let them climb, you want them to be more of an upright format plant, get yourself a mini variety such as the Glogo here or any of the Illusion series Syngoniums. Okay, so real quick, I just want to show you the setup in front of this other north-facing window because this is what it looks like most of the time, because I have 3 Anthurium in front of this window, and Anthurium are notorious for wanting to just turn all of their leaves to face the light, which once again is kind of an annoying thing to me because I don't get to look at the pretty front sides of these plants like ever, except for when I go to get the mail and I'm walking back into the house. I just really wish I could see these from the other direction, but I'm gonna rotate them right now so that you can see them. Okay, so I'm gonna actually have to rotate these separately because when I tried to rotate them all around, you couldn't see this one because the other one's leaves were in its way. And I'm kind of glad that this leaf is actually dying off. I don't know if you guys can tell. It's about like maybe halfway out the door. This plant did just flower for me. I think this is the first time it's actually flowered for me. This is a Anthurium. I'm going to mess this up. Anthurium Dark Crystal Mag by Carla Blackier. This is one of my favorite anthuriums I own. I got this from Redland Botanicals on Palm Street, and we unfortunately did not like getting repotted in 2025, and we threw a bit of a fit. And then we also potentially got spider mites. I definitely saw one on the plant, but I didn't have any webbing or anything at the time, and I kind of feel like I just caught it quick enough that I was able to get it under control. I did lose one leaf during that treatment process, but shortly thereafter, it put out this giant new leaf back there, which is fully hardened off now, I believe, you guys. And so I'm kind of glad that this one is dying off to kind of show you. It gives you a better idea of how dark these leaves are. I don't know if you would really truly appreciate the darkness of that leaf if you didn't see this leaf, which is halfway towards dying off and doesn't even look that yellow yet, right? But this is what I love about this plant are these gorgeous dark leaves. Now, this leaf is not perfect. It came in with some tears, some holes. It's okay. We forgive it, but it's a massive size up, you guys. Look how much bigger this leaf is than the other one that's dying off. And when I got this plant, the leaves were smaller than the size of my hand, like probably about 3/4 the size, maybe half the size of my hand. I will have had this plant for 2 years in April, and this is just the biggest leaf it's ever given me, and it's so like thick, cardboardy, beautiful plant. The new leaves come in this gorgeous shade of red. Like, I absolutely adore this plant, and I'm just happy that it finally gave me a new leaf. Now, I'm going to rotate this one back around and rotate the big one up here around first, and then I'll explain what's going on with my poor little baby down there. Actually, I just decided the easier thing to do was going to be just to temporarily remove the plant that we just looked at and rotate this big boy around. And this is my Anthurium radicans by Luxurians. I think it's radicans by Luxurians. It may be the reverse. It may be Luxurians by radicans, but I'll have the correct name up on screen for you. This thing was already a big plant when I originally got it off of Palm Street from Willow Ivy Botanicals. I will have also had this one for 2 years in April. Pretty much most of my Anthurium that you're going to see from here on out in this room, I will have had for 2 years in April or June. There's one that I think will be 2 years in October. But just to give you an idea of how long I've had these now, absolutely love Luxurians, Radicans, love the texture on the leaves, the very crinkly looking texture. This plant has always done well for me. This actually used to be living on my desk where the Syngonium white butterfly is, and the Syngonium white butterfly used to be living in front of this window. But I thought this plant would enjoy some more light. But what I don't enjoy is that the leaves are now a brighter shade of green than they were when they were on my desk. And I think you can see because this leaf up here, and by the way, these tears in these two leaves, cleaning ladies. My cleaning ladies like backed into these and didn't realize it when they were vacuuming one day and tore the leaves. That's what happened there. But hopefully you can see that this leaf is a little bit darker than the one you were just looking at. This leaf, usually the way this is positioned in this window, is kind of blocked slightly by this wall over here. So it doesn't get as much light, and as such, it is a bit darker. And I like that darker shade better. So I've actually contemplated moving this back to my desk, but it has also gotten rather large. So I'm not sure if that's really going to work out. But this plant has put out quite a few new leaves for me this year. It has killed off some of its oldest leaves in the process. It does have, I think this is a new one right here that hasn't even fully hardened off yet. And this thing flowers like nobody's business. Hopefully you guys can see all of those flowers up there, but this is a sterile hybrid. So this cannot be bred to make any other types of plants. Some of these flowers have died off too. I need to get in there and cut those off. But all in all, this plant is doing good. It did I repot it this year or was it in 2024? I think I repotted it around the same time as the one that we just looked at. I did a big old anthurium repot in the spring of 2025. This one didn't really skip a beat. It did fine with it. Some of the other ones, not so much. But let's look next at my anthurium red crystal lux down there, and I'll tell you what I did just recently and why. Okay, I feel like this plant is really hard to see right now because this is a new leaf coming in. They do come in kind of a brownish color, so it's kind of blending in with the soil, and this leaf is going to be janky. Hopefully you can tell it's not going to be a perfect leaf, but that's okay. This plant had three, I want to say, janky leaves on it. And this was a rehab that I also got from Willow Ivy Botanicals on Palm Street. And I didn't ask what it was rehabbed from, but I'm pretty sure based on my experience with this plant that it had a fungal infection on the leaves. When I got it, it was just one leaf. It had good roots, but pretty quickly I started getting yellowing around the edges of the leaves. And then it would give me a new leaf, and then that leaf eventually would do that too. And it just kept progressing with every single leaf and got bad enough to the point that I kind of came to the conclusion I think it was a fungal infection. And so what I ended up doing was just removing all of those leaves recently, like only a few weeks ago. And I could see that it was getting ready to push a new leaf anyway. So I was like, this is the perfect time. So I just did that. I gave it a fungal treatment. And I'm really hoping that that's going to resolve the issue moving forward, because when this plant has good looking leaves, which I'll put a picture up on screen of what it looked like when I got it, just so you have an idea. Like, it is a gorgeous plant, but it was just constantly I probably have some pictures that I'll show you of what the leaves were doing so you have an idea of like fungal. Now, also leaves can look like this issue, the same fungal issue when you're miswatering. So at first I think I was just hopeful that I was only miswatering this plant, but considering that it kept happening to every single leaf, and the leaf would look okay at first, and then it would kind of go downhill real fast. So that's why I think it was fungal. And just knowing that this was a rehabbed one, this is why you should always ask if you buy a rehab plant what it was rehabbed from, because if she told me it was a fungal issue, I would have straight gone to, oh my gosh, we still have a fungal issue the first time it happened, and probably wouldn't have gotten that bad. So we're going to be kind of starting over here. Like, I didn't repot it or anything after that, but we're starting over with an attempt at new leaves that are not having fungal issues. So the goal in 2026 with this one is to get it back to having more leaves and to hopefully 100% resolve the fungal issue. But we're going to move on to the IKEA greenhouse cabinet next, you guys. It's not good lighting in there, so I'm going to show you just the cabinet from a distance, but I'm going to pull all the plants out over here into better light, or else you guys aren't going to get a good idea of the real color of the plants. Okay, so here's my IKEA greenhouse cabinet. This is on the opposite side of the room from the windows we were just looking at. And I just have some real cheap Amazon purchased grow lights in this cabinet, but they've always done great for me. They are linked in my Amazon storefront, which there's a link to my Amazon storefront in the description of every single video on my channel. So you can always check out some of the products I mention and lights and things in the video today. If you're interested in them, go down there. If you don't see something in that link, just shoot me a comment and let me know, and I'll see if it's something I can add. But like I said, the lighting in here, I did warm lighting because I prefer warm lighting, but it really doesn't do the color of the plants justice. So I'm gonna bring them out and take them by the window so you can see them in natural light. Okay, so first up we have what has quickly become one of my favorite anthuriums that I own. This is an anthurium Funky Dark Mama by Regardens Portillier from Fontanimal Plant House. I actually have probably more anthurium from them than anybody else. I got most of them off of Palm Street. However, I did actually get this one gifted to me by them a year and a half ago, I guess it's been now. It was just a tiny little seedling, and now it is getting much larger leaves, and I just absolutely love this plant. These leaves are so dark and got that nice kind of bluish tinge to them. Now I do have another new leaf coming in. This one has grown so well for me over the course of the last year, much better than a lot of my other anthurium. We have a new leaf coming in right here. Just want you to see this gorgeous shade of red that these new leaves are when they come in. Just absolutely love it. It's barely killed off any leaves over the course of this last year, except for its super baby ones. This is the only baby one it's still hanging on to. So absolutely loving this anthurium. I have not done an anthurium care guide video for you guys yet because it's kind of the last genus I got into. And so I wanted to own more than one, which prior to 2 years ago, April, I only had one. And so I wanted to make sure I kind of knew what I was doing before I did a video. And I still feel like sometimes I know what I'm doing and sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And you'll kind of understand why as we go through the rest of the anthurium in here. But this has done fabulously for me. And I have another Portillier cross. It's not a Regardens Portillier, but it is a Portillier cross in the kitchen that so far is doing well for me. It's one of my newest plants. So I'm starting to think Portilliers are pretty sturdy since this is crossed with that as well. So maybe if you feel like you've kind of struggled with anthurium, maybe start looking into some Portillier crosses or just get a Portillier and see how that goes because this has definitely been one of the easiest and most rewarding anthuriums that I own. So it only seems appropriate that we go from one of the easiest, most rewarding that I've owned to one that's been on a struggle bus for the last year or over the course of that part of the last year. This is also from Fontanimal Plant House. This is a Anthurium luxurians by, I think it's a luxurians by LLB. Once again, the names will be up on screen for you guys. Sometimes I just mix up the order of them, but it's a type of pap. I'm not even going to try to say the full name. Short pap for short. So long bullet pap crossed with the luxurians. Once again, I think it's luxurians listed first, but this is actually the newest leaf and it's finally hardening off to the darker green color. It's normally a little bit even darker than this, but beautiful kind of, it's very reminiscent to me a little bit of the red crystal lux, except that it's not quite as dark as the red crystal lux. It doesn't have quite as bluish of a sheen to it, but it does have these really pretty pink petioles, which hopefully you can see in there. Now this is in moss because this plant did get root rot on me earlier in 2025. And so it got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to restart it in moss. It's doing great now. It finally gave me a new leaf recently. So that's the first new leaf it's given me since I started rehabbing it. As you can see, the last one that it still has that it hadn't killed off is dying off now. And also originally when it came in, it was all torn and everything. So I think we're on the mend now, but now I'm just paranoid about putting it back in soil. So I'm contemplating moving it to LECA. Now I did mention, I think in last year's full houseplant tour video that LECA, I've done well with plants in LECA, but for some reason the first few anthurium I tried in LECA did not go as well as I wanted them to, but I think what I did wrong is I didn't give them enough transition time of just being in water to get their roots used to being water roots first. And I think that's what I did wrong because I did, as you're about to see, transfer some more to LECA in 2025 and they're actually doing good. But I think I'm probably in 2026 at some point going to move this one to LECA. Now this is another Fontanimal Plant House anthurium. Got this one as a tiny little seedling too. Its leaves were like half the size of my hand. We're now nice and big, but I repotted this one in the spring of 2025 and it decided to quit growing. It has now gotten completely rerooted in there, but it does look like it's possibly getting ready to kill off this leaf. And I just want some new leaves on it because, and this one honestly looks like it's slightly yellower than it used to be. When this plant has fresh, new, hardened off leaves, they are very deep green with a slight oil sheen looking bluish color to them, which I absolutely love. This is a Anthurium Pink Lemonade by Eastern Dress Leary. If I get all of these names even remotely right off memory, you guys, I know the tags in there. I could pull it. Let's see if I got it right. I got it right. Pink Lemonade by Eastern Dress Leary. It's just there's so many names involved. The Hoyas are starting to get a bit difficult for me too, as you'll discover when we move into the kitchen. But absolutely love this plant. Very velvety leaves. Has been pretty laid back for me. I'm just disappointed that after I repotted it, it hasn't really been growing for me. Okay, so now we have another struggle bus one. This one I also had to rehab in 2025. I did move it to moss as well. And then I actually decided, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and try to move this one to leca because it wasn't doing anything for me. Unlike the other one we looked at that was in moss a second ago, it finally gave me a new leaf. This one was doing nothing and it was killing off still its only remaining leaf, which is still kind of killing off now. And I moved it to leca, but I put it into moss first. Then I took it out of the moss, left it in water a bit, and then moved it to leca and it put out this new leaf, which once again is not perfect. And honestly, you guys, when you're rehabbing Anthurium, at least in my experience, the first new leaf you get after rehabbing is rarely perfect. It actually looked pretty good on that one we looked at in moss, but the other ones that we've looked at, yeah, they're janky. It just happens. Sometimes the plant, it's just like, look, I need something to photosynthesize. It's not going to be perfect, but as long as it's growing, that's a good sign. And this plant at least has the right coloring on this new leaf because I wanted you guys to see how beautiful dark it is, dark green it is, slightly bluish sheen to it, and in that gorgeous veination. So this is a Fontanimal Plant House Anthurium. Again, this is a Pink Lemonade by Carla by Bessier AFF. Once again, the correct order of the names will be up on screen for you. But I loved this plant. This was one of my favorite plants that I had gotten what will be 2 years ago come April. And so I was very upset when it started killing off a bunch of leaves and everything this year. I do think it came down to the fact that it got a little bit of root rot going on and I didn't catch it quick enough. So once again, I did put it in leca and it has put out 2 baby leaves too, you guys, down here. So I think it's actually sprouted off like another head on the Anthurium and we're getting some little seedling sized leaves down there, but it's doing good. And I just noticed, you guys, it is getting ready to put out another new leaf right here. So yay, hopefully that one will not be as torn up looking as this one, but the goal for 2026 for this plant is to get it back to its former glory because this is hands down one of my like all-time favorite anthuriums out of the ones that I own. All right, you guys, actually I'm ditching the monopod because I can't collapse it to the level that I really need to get close up on these plants. So if the footage is a slight bit shakier, my apologies once again. I do have essential trimmers. I will do my best to hold steady. But this is another one of my all-time favorite anthurium that I own. And of course, it would decide to start killing off one of its leaves right when I need to film this video. But that's okay. That's just natural aging of the leaf. We can see the newest leaf that came in here that's not even fully hardened off yet is gorgeous looking. And this is a better representation of the color once it has finished hardening off. Once again, it has that kind of what I call oil sheen look to it with that slightly bluish tinge. Gorgeous plant. I love the like blood red, super dark petioles on this plant. And the leaves come in the same color as these petioles. And the camera is really doing the petioles no justice. But hopefully you can imagine that deep, dark red on a leaf as it comes in. This plant did not get repotted, so I didn't have any repot shock situation going on with this one in 2025. It did continue to put out a lot of leaves. I didn't even tell you the name yet. This is an Anthurium Woohoo's First Night by Ace of Spades. I did get this from Wild Roots, and I absolutely adore this plant. If anybody lives in this area and is interested in owning one of these, I do have a propagation one, a smaller one, available for sale. Just hit me up. And then up next we have another Fontanimal Plant House Anthurium. really like their plants in case you can't tell, you guys. Definitely check them out on Palm Street. Now, this is a Long Long Bullet by Ace of Spades 2. It is a very velvety leafed plant, and because it is an Ace of Spades cross, or no, I take that back. Let me try. Well, no, maybe it is the Ace of Spades. It's got the very pink petioles, so we saw these same petioles on the LLB by Luxuriance cross. So I think maybe the pinkness of these petioles might actually come from the LLB, maybe. I'm not sure what Woohoo's First Night cross is, because like I said, that last one we looked at is a Woohoo's First Night, which Woohoo is a company, crossed with an Ace of Spades. So I'll see if I can find what Woohoo's First Night, what that is a cross of. If it involves a pap of sorts like this, that probably explains also the dark red petioles on that one. So in that case, I would say that this pinkish coloring is definitely coming from the pap and not the Ace of Spades. But love that pinkish color. These leaves are not necessarily the prettiest color when they come in, honestly, but I just love once the leaves harden off. Now, I will say it's not my most favorite out of all of the anthurium I have, and we did have some issues this year. It just, after its repot in the spring of 2025, it threw a bit of a fit. It killed off a bunch of leaves, and then it just sat there not giving me new leaves at all until recently, when it gave me the leaf before this one, and then more recently just gave me this one. Now, this one is a little bit closer to the grow lights, so it's gotten a little bit chlorotic and a little patchy bit of chlorotic, if you will. It's not actually dying off, it's just got a different coloration to it because of the way the lights are hitting it and how close it is to them. So if it continues to get bigger this year, I might have to take it out of the cabinet. It's also just very awkward in there right now because of how the leaves are splitting like this. But it is a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. It's not one of my all-time favorites, and I have been wanting to downsize some more this year. So this one might be going up for sale as well as sometime during 2026. But moving on to another anthurium that I feel like just hates me, and I don't want it to hate me. This is actually one of the only anthurium I have that is a cross of Dock Block anthuriums, and I am going to consult the tag because this one's like 4 plants. This is a Anthurium Black Widow by Michelle by Brielle by Red Crystal. If you're familiar with all those plants, this should be an absolutely gorgeous anthurium if it would just stop doing crazy things to the leaves. We got this perfect sized up leaf because this was just a tiny, 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 like leaves this big little baby plant when I got it from Anthurium Papa from Palm Street. And I was so happy when I got this sized up leaf. It was perfect. And then immediately it started crisping up from the tip. I'm like, what the heck? Then it gave me another perfect leaf that now has started doing this weird thing, which I've never had any anthurium do this. I think maybe I just got off on my watering at some point. Watered too soon, went too long between waterings. I don't know. Comment down below and let me know, you guys. But hopefully you can imagine how pretty this plant would look if it didn't have all these problems. And I did repot it back in the spring of 2025, and it's doing okay. Like, it hasn't gotten crazy root bound or anything. I did recently water it, so that's why it's kind of hard to see the roots in there, but they look good. I don't know. I'm contemplating moving it to Leca. I feel like if I have issues that might be watering related, going to semi-hydro is a real easy way to resolve that, because all you have to do is make sure you keep the reservoir filled at the correct level and that you're changing out your nutrient solution enough. So that's kind of why I'm going towards wanting to potentially move any of the anthurium that I'm struggling with into a semi-hydro situation. So I don't know. This is just like my 2 cents. Like I said, this is the most recent genus that I have gotten into. I don't by any means feel like an expert in anthurium at all. And they are a little bit finicky depending on the types of anthuriums in my experience so far. This is why I've been hesitant to do a care guide. I might just start doing care guides on the ones that are doing well for me and just be like, we're going to do a care guide on this specific anthurium versus anthurium as a whole. Because I do find that some of them are more thirsty than others, and I just feel like trying to do a blanket video for anthurium care might be a little bit careless on my part, if that makes sense. So up next we have a David Portilla Dreams. This is actually, I believe, a Luxurians by Forgetii cross, which I did not know that when I bought it, and I keep wondering if the sinus on these leaves is eventually going to close, or if the luxuriance part of it is going to make it maintain its sinus because Forgetii has a closed sinus, so this is fused together on the Forgetii. But it did just get recently this beautiful new leaf, which once again, this is also a better indicator of what the red crystal Lux, the little poor sad baby over here, what it would look like if it wasn't looking sad right now. It does have a similar coloring to it as this, a similar texture, but the sinus is not quite as close together like this, and it's not rippled. I don't know if you guys can tell. This is kind of a ruffled, it's easier to tell on this leaf. You see how it's kind of like a ruffled sinus? Now it is attempting to start to kill off this leaf, probably because it just put out a flower. It did give me this new leaf and this new leaf over the course of 2025. It's definitely one of my slower growing anthurium. So my goal this year is just to hopefully get more leaves that look like this. Hopefully this flowering situation isn't going to cause both of these leaves to start dying off or whatnot. And I want to get it growing more upright again because before I rearranged my cabinet a few months ago and took out one of the shelves so that this could be on the bottom section, and now there's like 2 shelf spaces above it, it was putting its leaves down like this to avoid the ceiling of the cabinet, or the shelf above it, I guess I should say. And so then when it gave me this leaf, because it didn't have that restriction, this one is pointing more upwards. So I want to get it more upright and hopefully more full over the course of 2026. And then we have the very first anthurium that I ever got. This was gifted to me by Aroid Asia 4 years ago now. 3 or 4 years ago now. This is an Anthurium Silver Blush. Now, this plant has been a little bit fussy this past year for me. Now, this new one of these newest, is this the newest leaf even? Honestly, I'm not sure. It went to caterpillar, so I'm pretty sure this is the newest leaf. Let's hope that it's killing off the older one and not the newer one. This is the newest leaf. It's looking pretty good, but it just, once again, has not been a fast grower for me, which is not unheard of because it is kind of a form of, not kind of, it's a form of Doriaki. They're very slow growers. They stay more small and compact. But I wish it had given me more leaves over the course of the last year than it did. I did repot this one last spring as well. And so it did slow down a bit then, but then it's usually maintained at least 4 leaves for me. And lately it's been killing off its oldest leaves. So I don't know if I've gotten off on my watering and maybe I've just been going a little bit too long between waterings or what. But my goal this year is just to get a little bit more consistent with my watering on this one because I really think that's primarily the problem, and get it back to maintaining at least 4 leaves at a time. Okay, so we do have one more anthurium to look at after this, but this is a non-anthurium for a little bit of a break. This is my Alocasia. We'll put the scientific name up on screen. I'm really bad at pronouncing this one. This is sometimes referred to as an Alocasia frydek, like a non-variegated Alocasia frydek. However, if you go down the rabbit hole of the naming history for this plant and the variegated version of it, the variegated version is the first version that was given that name frydek. I think the rest of us just started calling this a frydek and then started calling the frydek a variegated frydek. But technically, it is what is up on screen for you. It is also sometimes just referred to as Alocasia green velvet. Super gorgeous velvety leaves, does get quite large. This one I've been growing for several years now from a corm that one of you guys sent me. And I am absolutely loving it over the course of the last year because it's finally sizing up for me. I did repot it in 2025, and I think that's part of the reason that it started to take off. I did start getting more leaves on it because before then I was maintaining like max 2 leaves at a time. But as you can see, we are over that now. I can already see a new leaf forming in here, getting ready to come out. And it is already spreading its roots around very nice in the Starbucks cup that I put it into. So probably at some point this year, I will pot it again. I am coming to discover, you guys, that Alocasia really actually like to have a lot more space for the roots than you think. And even when they don't look root bound, like they just really like to have a lot of space. And I think a lot of people forget that Alocasias in the wild, and Colocasias especially, and not all Alocasias, but Alocasias, Colocasias, Caladiums, those are all in kind of the same group. A lot of them grow in swampy, marshy areas. They grow in actual like standing water. So they really like a lot of moisture, and I think a lot of people just don't realize that, and they either just let them get too root bound to where they just feel like they're never getting enough moisture, or you let them dry out too much. They really want more water than you think. Just telling you right now, they want more water than you think, and typically they want more light than you think. So if you're struggling with alocasias, those are my two best tips for you. I do have a full care guide on my channel, but we're gonna look at the last plant in this room now, which is arguably the worst looking one. Okay, so this is an anthurium. I think it's a dreamweaver by a jack of clubs. I think there's another plant involved in there. A Doriaki by Dreamweaver by Jack of Clubs, possibly. Once again, it will be up on screen for you. This was a freebie seedling that was given to me by Willow Ivy Botanicals when I got some of my other anthurium from her. This thing was in soil until about a month ago, and it just was never growing. It wasn't spreading its roots. It was barely putting out new leaves. Once again, Doriaki crosses are notoriously slow, but he was just doing nothing. So I just randomly decided to try it in leca. And of course, it killed off all its leaves in the process of me transitioning it. But I can see, and you guys aren't going to be able to see it. This camera is not going to be good enough to get up in there. But if I peeled this off, which I don't want to risk breaking something, there is a new leaf getting ready to push out underneath there. So it's going to be the first new leaf that it gave me since putting it in leca. I will put a picture of what it looked like when I got it up on screen so you have some idea of what this plant is supposed to look like. It did just recently crisp up its last leaf, which wasn't looking that good anyway. But I'm really just hoping that the roots are going to start to spread. So hopefully you can see there are good roots in there. They've always been kind of green, but I want to see them start to grow. They've just never gotten any bigger the entire time I've had this plant. So I'm hoping maybe leca will make it happier. I don't know. We'll see. The goal the goal in 2026 with this plant is just to get it back to looking like a plant and not like a dead plant. Okay, so moving on to the kitchen, which technically this plant is kind of in between the kitchen and the living room, but this is my philodendron El Choco Red. Now, this is living pretty far away from light from both the southern facing windows in the living room and then a southeast facing window in the kitchen, but it seems to be enough light for it. Now, this plant, I had some woes with this plant in 2025. This plant has gotten knocked over, I think, at least 3 times, possibly 4 times now between the cats and once myself. It also got spider mites that I discovered a few months ago. I feel like I've eradicated the spider mites, but I do still have some beneficial bug sachets on there right now just in case. But I did discover recently when addressing the spider mites that I somehow, well, I'll say probably one of the times it got knocked over, the stem broke, and I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see it. I might need to come around the other side. Let's see. Maybe you can see down there, there is a complete and total tear where that dark brown is, right? That kind of dark brown horizontal line is right above the line of leca. I didn't realize that had happened. And so I think that is why I started getting some funky leaf stuff going on. I think it just, things weren't, all the nutrients and everything that needed to get up to these leaves weren't getting there. The newest leaf that just came in that's not fully hardened off is doing a lot better, but I really need to do an air layering on this plant and get it kind of adjusted back down so that into the leca so that it can have like a solid stem, roots above or roots coming from the solid part of the stem, I guess I should say, because I'm just really worried about where it's broken there because it's about halfway through. Scooter, you're so stinking cute. We're gonna have Scooter helping us, I think, film in the kitchen. But other than that, absolutely love this plant. My goal in 2026, though, is just to get it kind of back growing as a solid vine and hopefully not getting knocked over anymore. Now over here we have my other regular Monstera deliciosa albo. This is the one that I've been growing in leca. This was a plant that I had bought for my inventory for my rare plant pop-up shops, and I just really liked how the variegation was presenting on it when it was just an immature plant, and I decided to keep it. Now, interestingly enough, the variegation has changed since it was a little plant. Let's see if I can get you all the way down here. So all of this pretty marbled, highly marbled leafage is what made me decide to keep this in the first place. But then quickly thereafter, we started putting out green leaves with just a little bit of the marbling. And then on the opposite side of the plant, we started putting out a bunch of leaves with like the half moon situation. And it's continued to do that pretty much all the way up the plant. That is just how it's doing now. It's just how it's doing. And don't get me wrong, it still looks pretty. I'm just kind of annoyed that it decided to do that. And like I said when we were filming in the living room, I don't really need two Monstera albos, regular albos. And then the next plant, one of the next plants we're going to look at is the other variety of albo that I have. So I'm kind of thinking that I might offload this one sometime this year, see if anybody wants to buy it. And yeah, I really just don't need that many. So I need to get rid of one. And the other one is the one that was gifted to me by one of you guys. So it holds a bit more sentimental value, even though this one arguably grows way faster because it's in leca and the other one's in soil. But I don't know. I think I'd feel better about parting with this one than with the other one. But moving over here, and real quick, you guys, this door here is what you were seeing to the right of the last plant we looked at. That is an east-facing door, so that plant does get some indirect light from that. But this is a southeast-facing window, so these plants directly in this window get a lot of light, especially this time of year when the sun is tracking more southerly in the sky. It's a little bit less intense during the summer, although this window arguably gets hotter during the summer than during the winter. But we do have 3 plants over here, and this is the other albo variety I was talking about that we'll look at in a second. Normally, you guys, this is actually on the floor to the side of this, but I recently sold a plant that was living here, and I haven't decided what I'm going to put in its place yet. So I just kind of moved this up here so it'll be easier for us to film, but just wanted to let you know that it's usually not directly in the window. So it gets more indirect light because it is off to the side over there. But we're actually going to start with this Hoya. So this is a Hoya albo marginata, sorry, Hoya latifolia albo marginata. This was gifted to me in 2025 by Green Spaces ID. Now, I am not usually a large leaf Hoya girly. I like my smaller leafed Hoyas, but the beautiful markings on this one really caught my eye. Like, I really like how this one looks. Now, this is also what is referred to as the round leaf variety. So the leaves are more round in shape and less oblong, but it is a beautiful plant. My only concern with this plant is that I like to let my Hoyas trail. And my concern is these are such large leaves that if I do that, it's just gonna snap vines. So I don't really know if I'm gonna end up trellising this one eventually or not, but for now I'm gonna hang on to it. We're just gonna see how it goes. It is putting out a new vine, as you can see there. It has been growing nicely for me. So we're gonna see how we feel about it over the course of 2026. And then I'll decide what I'm gonna do with it long term. Now, down below here, we do have my Hoya polyneura, the all green variety that I got from Peta's Planters towards the beginning of 2025, also known as a fishtail Hoya. Absolutely love this plant. I also went a little polyneura crazy, as you will see when we get to the plants above the kitchen sink in 2025. I now have like so many varieties of polyneura, it's not even funny. But this is the largest one, and when I first got this, it wasn't trailing at all. So over the course of, it's been a little less than a year now, this has just massively grown and begun to trail, and I just absolutely love it. Now, I do need to figure out probably another place to put it because it's going to start to really sprawl even more than it already is and trail down to the ground, or maybe I can just figure out a way to elevate it here. But I definitely am going to have to do some restyling with a lot of the plants that you're going to see in the kitchen today in 2026. So be prepared for that. But then over here, we have the Monstera White Tiger. I feel like I want to move this somewhere else so that you can see it more accurately, the coloring, because it looks a little bit off just because the light is kind of shining through the backs of the leaves. Okay, I think that is a little bit better from a lighting standpoint. So the main difference between the Monstera White Tiger and just the regular albo, as far as I can tell and what I've been informed of, is that it has a bit more stripy, marbly variegation pattern to it that tends to present more equally across the leaves, kind of like what you're seeing on this leaf here. However, I am seeing some more of the sectoral, the large chunks of white on this one as well. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the large chunks of white. I know a lot of people, that's what they like about albos and they want all that white, but it dies off really easily, as you can see over here. And so you don't really get that with the more marbled look like up here. And so I prefer the more marbled pattern all over my elbows. Unfortunately, I don't get that, but I don't know what this one's gonna do per se yet. Now, real quick, I did get this gifted to me also from Green Spaces ID. It unfortunately had rust when I got it. So in 2025, I dealt with my first case of rust on a plant. I am making an upcoming video on how to deal with that if it happens to you. But that is why some of these leaves have been cut off. I had to cut off where the worst of the rust was. I actually had to remove a bunch of lower leaves that was all full down here too, just because it was so bad. And then I had to do a whole treatment process, which, like I said, I'll do an upcoming video for you guys on that. I've got it under control now. It's just very upsetting that I had to cut up a bunch of the leaves. But this plant has put out a bunch of new growth since I got it. And if you can see over here, here's the newest leaf. It's not even fully hardened off yet, but we are heading into half moon territory. You can see kind of on this one too. And I'm just like, no, why? What is it about my house that makes these elbows want to go half moon on me? Like, I want them to stay nice and marbly looking, like over here. Like this, where I had to cut out here, was all nice and pretty marbled and like, ugh, I don't know. I'm hoping we aren't just going to go into the same pattern as the other one we were just looking at. I mean, but do you get what I'm saying, you guys? This is why I don't need 3 varieties of elbows, right? Even though 2 of them are the same and this one's slightly different. I don't know. It's just really crazy. And I'm just kind of, if they keep doing this, if all my elbows keep giving me half moons, I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of over it. Maybe I don't need any elbows. I know some of you are like dying right now because you want half moon elbows. And once again, if you live in this area, feel free to hit me up. But let's move on to the only hanging plant that I currently have in my kitchen. This is a Peperomia tetragona, I think is the current scientific name for this plant, also known as a parallel peperomia. So I had mentioned earlier when we were filming, I think in the living room or possibly in my bedroom, that if you struggle with peperomias, this is a good one to start with. It is just so succulent. Like, you guys, these leaves are just so thick. They're like plastic. Like, it's not like your thin leafed caparatas like we were looking at in the living room. Now this plant is going to be wobbling all over the place. Shouldn't have touched it, but that's okay. So very succulent like, does seem to be more tolerant of drying completely out because it's storing a lot of water in those leaves and vines. Also seems to be a little less prone to root rot in my experience, but also is a vining plant. Now I have seen people train this to grow up a trellis. It will try to climb. Hopefully you can see it's trying to climb up into that upper part of the window over there. But you can also let it trail, which I prefer. However, just know if you do let it trail, these are very stiff vines, just like the leaves. So it does have a tendency to kind of sprawl out. It doesn't hang kind of close to the pot or very uniform, because when the branches do split, like you see over here, things could get a little bit crazy. They kind of go at weird angles and whatnot, but you can always just trim it to make it look better. I actually have not trimmed this one. I don't think I've ever trimmed it. Yeah, I don't think I've ever trimmed this one before. So it's not like super fast growing either, but we are getting a bit long here. So at some point in 2026, I will probably need to trim some of these longest vines, but I just absolutely love this plant. And then next up over here on my kitchen table, which is really just a glorified plant stand. I usually don't sit here and eat or anything else for various reasons, but this is my Calathea orbifolia, which takes center place and center stage on this table. Now, real quick, you guys, the southeast facing window we were just looking at is right here. So this plant does get indirect light from that window. And then the east facing door is right behind me, but it's quite far away from it. So it is really just getting indirect light. I don't think it ever actually gets any direct light on it, but my orbifolia does go through its leaf kill-off phase twice a year. And now is one of those times. So as you can see, we have some leaves dying off. And for this plant in particular, they always crisp up around the edge and then yellow and crisp up all the way up through the center for the most part. But once again, it is simultaneously pushing out a bunch of new leaves. There's a new one that just came in and isn't even fully hardened off there that are perfect. There's another one coming in back there. This one's relatively new. So I'm not worried about it, and it will pretty much kill off all of its leaves, you guys. It's kind of like Fred in that regard. It kills every single one off and replaces it with a 1-to-1 ratio. It's just what it does. It's always done that for me. It looks pristine come spring. No crispy edges, no nothing. And then it will go through this again towards the end of spring, heading into summer. It's just what this plant does. But the only big change possibly coming for this plant in 2026 is a repot, because I did notice its tubers are starting to bulge the pot when I was watering it the other day. So I think it's time to slip it out of this pot, give it a check, and see if maybe it needs to be uppotted. Okay, so I'm gonna take all of these plants out and show them to you guys in better lighting, but I wanted to give you a quick wide out shot of the kitchen counter over here. So I usually have only 3 plants over here growing underneath this Soltech Grove bar style grow light. Right now I have more because I did get an order of plants from Aroid Asia towards the end of 2025, and they were rehabbing over here. So right now this is what's living here. Not styled exactly how I would want it. I need to buy some smaller cover pots too, because I have a few plants that you're about to see, including this one, that don't have cover pots because I don't have any that fit them anymore. But let me go ahead and pull these out one by one into better lighting so I can tell you what they are. Okay, I actually think this lighting is pretty good over by the windows. So this is an Aglaonema Lotus Delight. So like I said, new plant that was gifted to me. I think I got these at the very end of November or maybe very beginning of December. Absolutely gorgeous Aglaonema. This is the one that I was saying I really want to keep, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't have exactly the greatest, a ton of great places for Aglaonema in my house, but it seems to be liking that Soltech Grove light underneath the cabinet in the kitchen. So I'm thinking I might just leave it there for now. Now, as you saw with Aglaonema Maria in my bedroom, they can get rather large over time. So it may not be able to stay there forever, but this is just a tiny little cute baby with these gorgeous pink and green leaves. New leaf coming in right here. I think that's the second new leaf it's given me since I got it and rehabbed it and potted it up. But it is just a gorgeous plant. Aglaonemas can be so rewarding, you guys. And if you are someone who really likes colorful plants, go search some Aglaonemas because you can get a lot of really fun, interesting colored ones. But super happy to own this one. Big thank you to Aroid Asia for gifting it to me if they're watching. And actually, you guys, I just realized all but one of the plants that we're looking at right now from the kitchen counter are from Aroid Asia, including this anthurium right here, which I want to say this is an anthurium crystallinum by Pap by Dark Phoenix. I know it's by Dark Phoenix, and I'm pretty sure it's got crystallinum. It's the pap that I'm not sure about, but as usual, the correct name will be up on screen for you. But this is a gorgeous anthurium. I love the anthurium Dark Phoenix, so I was super happy to receive a hybrid from them that uses that plant. Now, this was just a little baby. It has given me, I think, 3 or 4 new leaves at this point, but it has also periodically killed off some of its older leaves, which is fine because we're starting with these new leaves. This is the newest one that hasn't even fully hardened off yet. We're starting to get a better idea of what the venation is going to look like on this plant, because on the older leaves, it's not as pronounced. So I'm really excited that this one is growing well for me. It seems to be loving living under that grow light on the kitchen counter. It is quite root bound, however. So as much as I don't want to do it because it's been very happy, I have a feeling I'm going to need to up pot this in 2026, but gorgeous plant. And then this is the one plant from over there that is not from Aroid Asia. This was also gifted to me by Green Spaces ID in that same order with the Hoya latifolia albomarginata and the Monstera white tiger that we previously looked at. This is an Anthurium Ace of Spades. I have always loved, I said that wrong, you guys. This is an Anthurium King of Spades. Oh my gosh, why? if we start having every court card, if you will, of Anthurium, it's going to be like trying to keep track of white princess, white prince, white wizard. Just bear with me if I say the wrong thing on occasion. But what I meant was King of Spades. Love King of Spades. This is just a baby one. It's not very big at all, as you can tell by the size of my hand here compared to this leaf. But was super happy to receive this. King of Spades get these nice kind of very spade roundish shaped leaves. Just usually a very dark green, almost bluish green-ish color to the leaves. Now this leaf is the newest leaf. It's not really even fully hardened off yet, but it has been sizing up very nicely. That's kind of a better indicator right there of kind of the color. This is how small the leaves were when I first got this plant, but it seems to be doing well. We are spreading roots around nicely in here. Not crazy root bound or anything like that though. So I'm thinking we might actually be able to make it all the way through 2026 without needing to do a repot on this one. We'll see. Seems to be doing okay, like I said, under the grow light in the kitchen, but it is kind of getting taller and bigger pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if it will be able to stay there the whole time. So the only thing we might have to do in 2026 is find a new place for it to live. And then the last plant, once again, is from Aroid Asia. This is an Anthurium Portillier by Red Spider. Actually, I think it's an Anthurium Red Spider by Portillier. And I'm pretty sure those are the only two plants used in this cross. But as I mentioned when we were in my office, I love my Portillier cross that's in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet. And I am loving this one. Look at the colors of this leaf, you guys. Dark green with that hint of blue, just absolutely stunning. Now, some of the leaves did get damaged in shipping. That's why we have a little tear here and some holes up there. There's a little tear on this one, but all in all, these leaves are nicely sized. They are gorgeous. It has not given me a new leaf yet since I got it. This is part of the order that I got at either the end of November or the beginning of December, but it has been acclimating okay to being potted up, and it does look like it's getting ready. Sorry if I keep bumping the camera, you guys. It does look like it's getting ready to possibly push a new leaf or a flower. We'll just see out there, but it's doing fabulously and it's just so gorgeous, you guys. So I'm really just hoping it really starts to take off for me over the course of 2026. Okay, so once again, I know the lighting is a little funky being this far out, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the lay of the land, as it were, over here above the kitchen sink. So this is a west facing window, but as you can see, my neighbor's house is a 2-story house. It is very tall. So it does obstruct a lot of the direct light that would come in this window. Really, direct light only comes in towards the end of the day, and it comes from this side and kind of cuts across. So the plants on this side get less direct light than the plants on this side, but all of the plants here have done well living in this window. So we're gonna try to look at them in place, but depending on how the lighting is, I might have to bring them over to the other side of the kitchen like I did with the ones from the counter. But up first, we have what is actually a propagation from my original Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. Now, I did sell off my mama plants last year, basically because I decided that I was having an easier time growing this plant in leca. So this is in leca. The mama plant was in basically a soil type substrate. And this plant has just grown basically equally as fast, but I've had less problems with browning leaf tips and leaves dying off and things like that with the one here that's in leca. Now, let me try to pan up here for you. This thing reaches the top of its pole very fast. I do need to give it another extension to that pole. If I don't catch it quick enough, like I need to do it today. I need to give it an extension. It will end up getting too top heavy and it will snap, which is what happened not too long ago. And so there are some slightly flaccid looking leaves. Let me get you up closer and rotate around so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, hopefully you can see what I mean. These leaves are not perky. They're very limp looking. And that is because the top part of this plant, I didn't give it that pole support. It is more than one vine in this pot, by the way, at this point, you guys. But on one of the vines, the top part, I didn't give it that support, extra support, it snapped. And so I just shoved it down into the leca to start developing roots. It was a split vine, so there's a vine here and a vine here, but they're connected to one vine down in the leca. And I'm just waiting for it to develop roots, and then those should perk up. It's honestly taking longer than I thought it would, but I have also previously propagated the top of this plant and shoved it down in on this side behind here. Rotate it around. So this vine right here, same thing. I just cut it off the top, shoved it in here, and it grew roots. And now that vine, I think, is the one, yes. So this propagation that I just shoved down in here is the one that has outgrown the top of the pole now. So very easy to just propagate these plants by cutting them and shoving them back into the pot. I just use like a little metal chopstick to kind of wiggle the leca around to be able to get it down far enough down in there. So technically this is 3 base vines in one pot, but the still limpish one over here has 2 vines growing off of that one base point. So this will be, if that one finally roots in and starts growing, will be 4 vines growing up this pole. Rhaphidophora are kind of hard to keep up with, you guys. They grow so quickly, at least the tetraspermas do. Can't really speak to the other varieties because I haven't grown any of those. But I do like how it looks. I do like that Rhaphidophora tetraspermas are kind of like a smaller version of a Monstera deliciosa. If you don't have room for a Monstera deliciosa, it's definitely a great kind of dupe for that. But I do find that they grow way more rapidly than Monstera deliciosa. Okay, guys, I just tried filming in place some of these plants, and it's just really hard because of the distance from the sink to here. And so I'm going to take them over by the other windows and show them to you one by one. But let me do like a quick kind of pan situation for you first so you can see kind of how things are laid out here. So I do have mostly Hoyas up here now, and I'll wait to name them all off until I take them out one by one. Now, there's a lot of plants up here. Normally, this is not how I would have this styled, but I just have had a lot of plants acclimating up here that I got late in 2025. And I did end up making what I'm referring to as a Hoya platter, as you can see right here. This is just kind of a raised little plant stand that I piled a bunch of 2-inch, 3-inch Hoyas on because it works. And it also makes it easier when you're cleaning to just be able to move this whole platter instead of like 1,000 little pots. But I didn't have room for every little Hoya up here, so I do have some just kind of sporadically spread around over here. So like I said, this is something I'm going to need to work on in terms of styling and where these plants are going to live permanently later in the year. And we will probably come back over here and look at these 2 larger plants in place. But let me start pulling out the smaller ones and telling you what they are. Okay, so first up we have the second Hoya polyneura that I got in 2025. And this is the silver variety. Hopefully you can tell these leaves are very silvery compared to the all green one that we looked at before, especially these newest leaves here. And for whatever reason, this particular leaf came in this weird shape. Just happens on Hoyas sometimes. And I do find when I get new Hoyas that very frequently it's the first leaf they put out while acclimating in my house that will be the one that is very oddly shaped. But gorgeous plant. Now this one has not been growing as quickly for me as the all green variety. And that tends to be kind of the case with polyneuras from what I hear is the all green one grows way faster than the other varieties. Not to say that the other varieties grow super slow or anything like that, but you are likely to notice a difference. So I'm just really hoping to see this one start to take off in 2026. And then next up, we have my Hoya houseplants inner variegated. So when we were in the living room, we saw the outer variegated version of this one. And I actually got this one first. So I've had this one for a year and a few months at this point. Beautiful plant, absolutely love it. Relatively quick grower for me. For whatever reason though, we are putting out a one full unvariegated vine, actually I guess 2 now over here. But this is a branch off of the vine next to it that's totally variegated. So I have no clue why we're doing that. I think even this one is a branch off. Yeah, this one is a branch off of a variegated one over here. So I have no idea why it decided to put out these 2 all green branches. And at first it wasn't really bothering me, but now as they're getting longer and they're starting to split off, it's getting more green. So what I'm probably going to do this year is actually cut off all of the all green ones and propagate them and just make an all green Housplant. I don't have one. And I will probably keep it because I kind of like how it looks. I mean, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like it with this. It almost wouldn't even be that bad if they were kind of one was here and one was here and one was over here and it kind of mixed in. It could be kind of cool, but I don't like that it's just like all on this one side. So I want to get that fixed up this year. And then I'm really hoping that maybe this year will be the year that this blooms for me the first time. And then this is one of my newest Hoyas that I got. This is a Hoya Bertonier, or I guess AFF Bertonier, also known as a DS70. I don't know. This is one of those that's got a weird naming history, you guys. I will probably just have up on screen what it was sold to me as. And actually, this was gifted to me. This was another one that came in the Aroid Asia order at the either the end of November or the beginning of December. But I've always wanted one of these. This is the intervariegated variety of it. These leaves are super velvety soft. Now, I did rehab this and pot it up, and it has been doing well. However, I don't know what happened. I think maybe when I was putting it back in its cover pot one day after watering it, I accidentally snapped off part of one of the vines. I think it was this one. And so I do have that propagating in water. It looks like it's starting to get roots now. So my plan is to eventually add it back into the top of this pot. So then we'll have an even fuller plant. It is relatively long with this one vine though. And so really this year is probably just going to be about this plant developing its roots more and then starting to grow more. And then probably the following year is when we might potentially see it start to flower. Now, this plant was my most expensive wish list plant that I acquired in 2025. Did get it towards the end of the year, and unfortunately, I bought one of these in a Palm Street live sale. It arrived and it quickly died. There was clearly something just already wrong with the plant when it got here because I mean, it just like pretty much immediately died. So, this was basically the replacement for that one. Now, this one, when it arrived, did already have a new growth point starting to push off, unlike the last one. The last one was just two leaves like this, too. But thankfully, this plant has stayed alive and the new growth point has pushed out these two new leaves. Now, once again, a little bit slower growing than the all green one, but this was also a much smaller, less established plant when I got it. It doesn't have a ton of roots, so it's going to spend most of its time right now working on developing those roots and spreading them around versus just pumping out a ton of new leaves. But it is alive, it is growing. And that is really the most important thing to me. So I just hope to continue to keep it alive and growing over the course of this year. But I absolutely love this. This is a combination. Did I say this was a Hoya Jasmine, Polyneuria jasminca? You guys, I am just all over the place. It's been a long day of filming. Hoya Polyneuria jasminca is what this is. It is kind of a combination of what's a silver splash. So this isn't all silver like the silver we looked at in the middle, and it's not all green. It's kind of a combination of the two. And then it does have the white edges to it, easier to see over here. So that is the Albo marginata version of it. It's a combination of those two, and I just think it is stunning. The first time I saw it, I immediately put it on my wish list, and I'm just so happy to have this plant. And then here we have a Hoya VL9. I should probably also mention to you guys that a lot of these Hoyas that you're going to be seeing right now, I got them from Texas Plant Connection. They are on a sabbatical hiatus situation right now. So unfortunately, if you're asking me where'd you get that, I want to get one, you're going to have to find somebody else to get them from right now. Rooted in Somerville is a good one to consider on Palm Street. But this VL9, absolutely loving the ovalish shaped leaves with the silver splashing on them. This has started to really take off over the course of the past year. As you can see, we're getting very long vines, and we are now starting to actually push out our leaves on our vines. People who are not into Hoyas or who are new to plants, just so you know, this is what Hoyas do. A lot of Hoyas, not all Hoyas, but a lot of Hoyas put out really long bare vines, and then they will put out leaves on them. So if you get really long bare vines, don't just think, oh crap, I need to chop this off. This is silly. It will eventually get leaves on it. Now, in my experience, when you see them go crazy long like this is really long, and then put out leaves, it's usually a good indicator that it's a Hoya that would prefer to climb than trail. but I prefer my Hoyas trailing, so I'm just going to let it trail. And here's another good example of funky shaped leaves. So this is one of the first new leaves that it gave me when I got it over a year ago. Look how weirdly shaped that leaf is. That's so odd. So yeah, sometimes Hoyas just do this weird thing like this. I don't even know, but absolutely loving this plant. Now, next up, we have what is known as a Hoya cumingiana albo marginata. So albo marginata just means it's outer variegated. It's got the white around the edges and the green in the center. Now, this is a combination of two plants. One was gifted to me by Aroid Asia, and one I bought from Texas Plant Connection. I decided I wanted to get a fuller plant more quickly. So I potted them up together not that long ago, and really excited to see this fill in. I've seen a lot of really big bushy all green cumingianas and they look gorgeous. This is a thinner leafed Hoya, so they are a little bit thirstier than a lot of your thicker leafed Hoyas. Just be aware, the thinner the leaf is on your Hoya, the more frequently you're going to end up needing to water it. But super excited to see how this one does in 2026. I want to see it grow a little bit more quickly. That is kind of my goal for this plant over the course of this year. And then this is a Hoya Mamasa, also gifted to me by Aroid Asia in 2025. This is one of the smallest leaf Hoyas that I have, and I just absolutely love it. Some people are really weird about small leaf Hoyas. They don't like them. I think it's super cute. I really think it's super cute. And I like that the vines on this one are staying green so far, but this one had a little bit of a rehab problem. We didn't rehab as well as I would have liked to. So we are now just working on spreading roots around, and we've put out a little bit of new growth, and I'm just really hoping we really take off over the course of this year. You guys, every year I say I'm going to make the houseplant tour video shorter next year, and it always ends up longer. I just feel like I have so many more plants now, and I really don't than last year. I don't know. I talk too much, you guys. I really like plants. Hopefully you guys don't mind. Be sure to give a thumbs up to this video if you're enjoying it. But this is a Hoya Bella. It's first Hoya Bella I have ever owned. Only Hoya Bella I own, but it's making me want to own more. This is the outer variegated version. So once again, the white is on the edges of the leaves and the green is in the center. This was an impulse buy at Peta's Planters when I bought the silver polyneura that we were looking at. They had like a little display at checkout with a bunch of 2-inch plants. This plant was only about that big when I got it, and it has just taken off over the course of 2025. I got it sometime, I want to say maybe around June or so in 2025. And so, yeah, it's really starting to take off. They are really quick growers. I am super excited for this one to eventually flower. Might not happen this year just because it's such a young plant, but at the rate it's growing, there's a good possibility this year I will work on propagating back into the top so we can have a more full plant instead of just 2 vines. But we'll see. And up next we have from Texas Plant Connection, Hoya Suzy Q. Now I did end up in multiple different, I think 3 different Palm Street live sales with them, bought 3 different Suzy Qs, and I just recently potted them up together. So there are 3 different plants in here, but this is a variety of Carnosa. So just like the Wilbur Graves, just like the Compacta, just like the Crimson Princess that we looked at before, but this does have a crinkled aspect to it. So this is actually a cross between a Hoya Carnosa and I think it's a Hoya, I want to say it's a Hoya Carnosa Crimson Queen crossed with a Hoya Crinkle 8, I believe. If I can figure it out, I'll have it up on screen for you, but more commonly referred to as the Suzy Q. So it's kind of like a slightly less curled, crinkly compacta, and this is outer variegated, as you can see. So I don't know, I think that's why I was really attracted to it. Has given me a few new leaves, but not very many. I kind of suspect that it was going to be a bit of a slower grower, but then some of you have told me that yours grows really fast. So I think maybe mine's just still working on getting those roots established, and then hopefully it will take off over the course of this year. And then this Hoya is also from Texas Plant Connection. This is a Hoya Croniana Black Silver. So it has kind of dark green leaves that sometimes take on kind of a blackish look to them. The vines even look kind of blackish at times, but then it also has that silver coloring on it as well. Sun stresses a really beautiful kind of dark, almost purplish type color. So very, very similar to the super silver that I have in my living room, except the coloration is different, but the growth pattern will be the same. I think the flowers are going to be white like on that one. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really just hoping that over the course of this year, I will actually get blooms on this one. This is a relatively new one, haven't even had it for like a few months. So definitely interested to see how this goes over the course of the year. And then this was also in the most recent Aeroid Asia order I got a few months ago. This is a Hoya lacunosa Asami reverse, which just means it's intervariegated, and it's kind of hard to tell on some of these leaves that they're intervariegated. There's just a little bit of dark green on the edges, but really excited to see how this one goes. Now, in the rehab process, this was 2 vines. In the rehab process, one of the vines completely died off. So we did go down to 1 vine, but it's doing well. It hasn't put out any new growth yet, but that's probably just because it's really working on spreading its roots. So I'm hoping that this turns out to be a relatively quick grower, and then maybe we can propagate it a little bit over the course of 2026 and plant back into the top and make it a fuller little Hoya. And then up next, we have the Hoya Polyneura albomarginata, so the outer variegated version with the white on the edges of the leaves. Once again, relatively new addition from Texas Plant Connection. This one, though, is already really starting to take off. I think it's going to be the second fastest growing. I might take that back. Maybe the third fastest growing out of all my Polyneuras. Once again, the all green one is by far the fastest, but this one has already put out a bunch of new leaves. It was just a 2-leaf plant when I got it. I want to say in November. So it's already put out this new vine over here, and we are putting out our 5th and 6th leaf on that vine. It's not even looking that rooted in the pot. So just to give you an idea, it looks less rooted than the Jasminka, but it is definitely growing way more quickly. So super excited to see how this one takes off over the course of this year. And then next up, we have a Hoya Lori Lynn, which unfortunately got a little damage in shipping, also from Texas Plant Connection back in November. This is an outer variegated version of possibly a Wayettii, possibly a Kintiana. I cannot find definitive answer to that question anywhere, but a lot of people say it's an outer variegated Wayettii. A lot of people say it's an outer variegated Kintiana. If anybody knows for sure, comment down below. But it is giving me new growth now, so super excited about that. I am hoping that it grows more quickly than my Wayettii did when I first got it. Otherwise, we're going to be looking like a tiny little baby like this for a long time. So just interested to see how it does over the course of this year. Also interested to see how this cutie, also from Texas Plant Connection back in November, does. It is a Hoya that is from Thailand, but it did not have an identification tag on it, so it is just referred to as Hoya Thai, no ID, but gorgeous, splashy, like green on green variegation. So cute. Has not given me any new growth yet though, so I'm just kind of getting a little nervous. I did just move it into my epiphyte mix from the cocoa core that it was in. That's why we can't see the roots, but you could see roots before. So I think it's just working on establishing its roots still, and then hopefully it will kick off some new growth because this is such a cute one. I'm so excited to see what it looks like as it matures. And then here we have another lacunosa variety. So this is a Hoya lacunosa Midori. It is an intervariegated variety of lacunosa. I got this from the Plant Stop US booth at PlantCon Dallas back in October. It was a fresh import plant, so I got it rehabbed and potted up. It is doing fabulously. It has given me a little bit of new growth, but not a lot, which is expected. It's obviously going to work on its roots first. So this is actually the first lacunosa I've owned, and then the one we looked at a few plants ago is the second. I really don't know what to expect with these in terms of growth rate and whatnot, but they are smaller leaf Hoyas, and in my experience, a lot of smaller leaf Hoyas tend to grow faster than their larger leaf counterparts. So I'm really hoping this is going to be a fast grower, and I'm hoping maybe also it will be a quick bloomer, so maybe we will get some blooms this year. And now we have the final Hoya Polyneura that I own. This is the intervariegated version, so the lighter color on the inside, darker color on the outside of the leaves. This has been the second fastest growing one for me. I got this at PlantCon Dallas 2 back in October. It was just these few leaves up here, and it's already just pushing out mad new growth coming off of this one vine. So I think this one's gonna fill in at least as much as my all green one did over 2026, but I am probably going to need to do some chop and prop back into the top to get it to be as full as that one, but it's just so gorgeous, you guys, so gorgeous. And then this is the last Hoya that we have to look at here in the kitchen. This was also from Texas Plant Connection back in November. This is a Hoya Wallaria, might be how it's pronounced. Splash, also sometimes Pachawallaria, I'm probably butchering that. 023 is sometimes what it's labeled as, but it reminds me of the Thai No ID one that we were just looking at, except the leaves are massively larger. And once again, I'm not a large leafed Hoya girl, but I just couldn't get over the splashy look of these leaves. And it's kind of a green on green splashiness. And I just thought it was gorgeous. So impulse buy, but I mean, so pretty. But once again, I have a feeling this is one that might need to be trellised. We'll just have to see. It hasn't given me, I think it's only given me one new leaf, this one, which is gorgeous. Since I got it, it's definitely working on its roots and spreading its roots, but we'll just see kind of how it goes over the course of the year. And probably at some point this year, I'm going to need to decide whether I'm going to try to trellis it or not. And then this is my only Haworthia that I still have in my collection. This is a Haworthia retusa. Hopefully you can see it's been getting a little bit sun stressed. Some of these leaves have kind of a purplish coloration to them. That is because it is on the side of the window that gets more of the direct light. But I just love this plant. It has kind of transparent little stripes on it, and it kind of gives you a see-through peekaboo kind of effect on this plant. Now, this thing has gotten massively grown out. Like, it used to be very short and compact. Over the years, though, because I think I've had this one for 4 years, maybe 3.5 years, it's really gotten grown out. It's getting to the point where I could propagate it. So I might do that this year. I've never propagated it, but it's definitely a cute little succulent if you are into succulents. I'm probably either just gonna let it be over the course of this year, or we might do a little bit of propagating, which of course I will film for you. And moving on to our last two plants up here, we do have my philodendron red Anderson, which is outgrowing its pole. I need to give it an extension, but this has been one of the best growing hybrid philodendron like this. It is a hybrid of a climber and an upright philodendron, just like your pink princesses are, your white princesses are, all of those plants. This one has grown the easiest for me without just getting tinier and tinier leaves and stuck leaves and all the problems that tend to come with these plants. Now, it has gotten a little bit bald at the base, which is why I started a little while ago to air layer it, and I am working on an air layering video for you guys. So this is gonna get chopped and propped here soon, and we will get it back to growing into a more bushy looking plant. Now, the last plant we have to look at right here is my Apobalus, also known as a purple sword plant. Hold on, let me adjust this lighting down a little bit too bright right there. This plant is so gorgeous, you guys. I absolutely love it. These variegated, splashy looking leaves with the beautiful maroon colored backsides to the leaves. This plant, though, has definitely gotten a bit grown out, and that's just the nature of how this plant grows. So it was kind of flopping over. I had to kind of stake it up and Velcro it together. So the goal this year is that I need to one by one cut these down and let new growth start to come in. When I do that, it will likely pup, basically. It will produce off new shoots from the base. So this should end up looking way more full by the end of the year. But I'm just gonna take my time with it, just cut one at a time, let it get a lot of new growth coming in before I cut the next one. So I may not even finish cutting them all before the end of the year, but we will see. Okay, so we're in my upstairs living room right now, and I currently only have two plants in here, and that's because this room, when I bought this house, had solar screens on all of the windows, and the only one I've been able to get the solar screen off of is this one. And it was very difficult, and I know it's hard to tell right now because it looks real bright, but it actually decreases the amount of light that gets through the window by more than half if you're using a light meter. So that is why the Alocasia cuprea, which I'm going to rotate in a second so that you can see what it looks like better, I wanted to leave it like this first so you can see, even though it's really close to this east-facing window, it's curved itself drastically towards that window, and it's not trying to curve itself towards the other window because that's how much lower the light is that's coming through there. But let me get this one rotated around. Now, this plant is one of my favorite alocasias. I think I've had this one for about 4.5 years now and absolutely love it. I've really not had a hard time keeping a lot of leaves on it. It is getting ready to kill off its oldest leaf over there, but it is also, I can see right now, pushing in a new leaf right there. And in 2025, we had a new plantlet start down there that is growing in nicely. So this is going to become a much more full Alocasia cuprea over the course of 2026. Next to this, we have my Tenanthe Burl Marxii, and I can't recommend this one enough because look how beautiful these leaves are. They're kind of a turquoise color with these beautiful stripes, the beautiful maroon color to the backside of the leaves. And this thing has just taken off for me in the last few years. When I got it, it was just a tiny little plant. Tenanthes grow crazy fast, you guys. I mean, it's sitting on a pie plate right now, just to give you an idea of how big it's gotten. Now, it is killing off some of its older leaves, and I do need to give it a little bit of a cleanup and trim some of those old leaves off. But it's not a big deal because it's constantly popping off new leaves. I cannot recommend these plants enough. And I kind of wish I had it somewhere else downstairs so I could enjoy it more, but it's happy up here, so that's where it's going to stay for now. So the only other plants currently living upstairs are here in my workout room. And the only reason they're up here is because they got moved in here when I needed to quarantine them for having flat mites. And I got rid of the flat mites well over a year ago, and I just have not moved them back downstairs yet. So these are two of my Marantas that were living in my bathroom before they got quarantined up here. I've just been nervous to put them back there, and honestly, they're just so happy up here right now. I feel kind of bad about moving them again. But we have my Maranta Lemon Lime over here first with the beautiful green leaves with the brighter yellowish stripes. These plants have come back from looking awful, like basically like they were on death's doorstep when we had the flat mite situation. So really proud of how they have done over the course of the last year. And I'm just hoping that we stay pest free and we continue to start to trail again over the course of this year. And my red Maranta over here was the worst out of the group. And we have just come back with a vengeance now. The lighting is getting a little too blown out. Let me bump it back down a bit here. Maybe if we come from the other angle, we can get a better look at the leaves on this plant. But it is so much darker green since it's been living up here. This is a north-facing window, by the way, you guys. It definitely was getting more light in my bathroom because that's an east-facing window. Definitely was getting more heat because it's an east-facing window during the summertime. And I think that was bleaching out the leaves a bit. So I definitely am enjoying the coloration of the leaves more since it's been living up here, which is another reason that I think I've just been procrastinating moving it back downstairs. But absolutely gorgeous plant. This has always grown the best out of my Marantas for me, this red one. And it was so long and trailing before it got the flat mites, and I am just so happy that we are back to trailing again. So we'll see if I end up moving them back downstairs or not this year, but I'm just so happy that we're recovered from the pest situation. Now, this is the only other plant that's been living up here. It does look like it's getting ready to kill off this leaf, possibly. But this is my cyclamen, and it also got flat mites. It seems to have recovered. Now, I was checking it out with my microscope the other day, and there was some weird stuff on it. And it dawned on me now that maybe it was just the pollen from the flowers, but I don't know. It was kind of the color of pest eggs, kind of orangish red color, and there was a lot of it. So I was kind of like, oh, what is happening? And I didn't see any live pests, and this was really just on the backside of a few of the leaves. But I removed those leaves because it totally freaked me out and put me into a panic state. But it's still looking absolutely gorgeous. Now, this did used to live in the west-facing window in my kitchen. It loved it in that window. I actually think it might like that window better than living up here. I just say that because it grew all the way around without losing leaves when it was in that window. Up here, the backside of it is like, oh, and there's still a beneficial bug sachet on it. Didn't even realize that. But you can see the backside is kind of bald. I didn't have that problem when it was living in the kitchen. I think it just wants more light than this, honestly. And so Yeah, it still looks good on the side that's been facing the window. And I know people are like, that's common because that side's not facing the window, but only one side of it was facing the window in the kitchen, and I didn't have that problem. So that's kind of what I'm basing it off of. But I absolutely love the kind of whimsical white flowers that this plant gets and these beautiful kind of two-toned leaves. I know this is typically more of an outdoor plant, but I've really enjoyed growing this indoors. And I would love to move it back down to the kitchen at some point. So maybe I will do that in 2026. But there you have it, you guys. Those are all of the plants currently in my permanent collection in my home. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If so, please be sure to click that like and or subscribe button down below. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Aloha!